All right, I will call the meeting to order. En ce début de réunion, je
And at the beginning of the meeting, I'd like to say on behalf of the Council that Ottawa is built on unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. The peoples of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The City of Ottawa honors the peoples of and the land of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, and to all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, and to their past, present contribution to this land.
Councillor Lulaf.
Good morning.
Councillor Dudas. Councillor Curry.
Here.
Councillor Kelly. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Present.
Councillor Johnson.
Here.
Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Councillor King.
Here.
Councillor Troster. Yeah. Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Menard.
Here.
Councillor Brown.
Here.
Councillor Lowe.
Present.
Vice Chair Gower.
Here.
Vice Chair Kitts.
Here.
Co-Chair Leeper.
Here.
Mayor.
Here.
You have quorum, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, merci. Are there any declarations of interest? Confirmation of minutes from the meeting on the Joint Committee meeting on October 1st. Are those carried? All right, we will move to the one item on our agenda, the partnership with Build Canada Homes. And just before we turn it over to staff for a presentation, I just wanted to make a few remarks. Et je vais commencer en nous posant à tous la question.
I'd like to ask ourselves the question, why are we here?
Why did each of us choose to run for office to serve our community? I believe each of us is here because we want to help people, to create meaningful change, to restore hope, to build a better city. Today, we have an opportunity to do all of that. I don't have to tell anyone here about the scope of the housing crisis. This is a critical moment in our city's history, in our country's history. People have been losing hope. The cost of homeownership is rising. The cost of housing is rising. The dream of homeownership is fading. Ici à Ottawa, nous faisons tout ce que nous pouvons.
In Ottawa, we are doing all we can to deal with the housing crisis.
To the housing crisis. Over the past year, as you know, we've taken a number of significant steps to achieve that goal. We launched the Housing Innovation Task Force, and we're implementing more than 50 recommendations to streamline the process at City Hall, cut or defer fees, and shorten approval times. We eliminated and reduced the scope of dozens of studies. We passed a new zoning bylaw that is much more permissive. Ottawa is saying yes to housing. Notre objectif
Our objective is to become the best city for housing in Canada.
The most housing-friendly city in Canada. Today, we are making a huge leap forward. We are the first city in Canada to strike a deal with Build Canada Homes. The agreement before us today is historic. It is a game changer. We will build 3,000 new homes in Ottawa. These will be truly mixed-income communities, with the emphasis being on providing affordable and supportive housing. Well over half of these units will be lower or significantly lower than what the market can typically provide. We are leading by example. In fact, other cities are already reaching out to us to ask advice on how they can achieve similar agreements. Il s'agit d'une entente historique.
It is a historic agreement between our city and the federal government.
Historic deal between our city and the federal government. This agreement has been in the works almost since the last federal election. Last summer, I met with Federal Housing Minister Gregor Robertson and proposed some bold ideas about how we could dramatically accelerate the construction of new homes on federal land in Ottawa. That led to a series of meetings between my office and ministry officials. And then some of you may remember a very hot Sunday in September of last year when Prime Minister Mark Carney launched Build Canada Homes at a site in Nepean. Immediately following that announcement, the Prime Minister and I walked over to a temporary building on that site and sat down for a meeting. Build Canada Homes was literally only a few minutes old, and we were already getting to work on a deal for Ottawa. The Prime Minister and I are completely aligned on our objectives. we have a shared sense of urgency around housing. Nous voulons construire plus de logements.
We want to
à
build
Ottawa.
more housing in Ottawa.
Move as quickly as possible. I reiterated to the Prime Minister that I want Ottawa to be the leader in Canada, the most housing-friendly city in the country. So we got to work. And a couple of months later, after a lot of effort from both our governments, Prime Minister Carney was my guest at the Mayor's Breakfast. And we signed an agreement worth hundreds of millions of dollars to build 3,000 homes in Ottawa. Signing that deal was only the start of a complex process that led to the agreement we are being asked to approve today. Over the last 4 months, my office worked with city staff and the team from Build Canada Homes to develop the final agreement. This was not an easy process. We went back and forth on a number of issues, but we were able to land on a historic deal that will lead to thousands of new homes, including deeply affordable homes, being built in our city. I think this is what the public expects of their elected representatives, especially in response to something as significant as the housing crisis, to work collaboratively together in their best interests, to eliminate obstacles and find solutions, to move with speed and clarity, quite simply to get things done. So let's talk about the agreement. Through this deal, the city is receiving funding for 1,000 new affordable or supportive units in Ottawa. These units will come directly from the city's priority list. Il s'agit d'un investissement de
It is an investment of $150 million over the next 2 years.
$150 million over the next 2 years, a game changer for Ottawa. It's a giant leap forward for affordable and supportive housing. It will change many lives for the better. In addition, BCH will invest to build 2,000 new units on federal land in our city. Through their model, some of those homes will be at market prices, but a significant percentage will be affordable or deeply affordable when compared with our own affordability targets. That means by working together, we're building 3,000 new homes in our city, and the majority of those homes, as many as 1,800, will be affordable and supportive units, and that includes 200 that will be deeply affordable, serving residents and families who are in the greatest need. Grâce à cette entente,
Thanks to this agreement, all of these units will be affordable for generations to come.
Thanks to this agreement, all these units will be affordable for generations to come. Our commitment in this agreement is to remove costs from the process to make the homes as affordable as possible. So we are waiving property taxes, charges, and fees on the affordable and supportive units. That ensures the lowest cost possible for residents. And it ensures that those units remain publicly owned and affordable for generations to come. We are also eliminating the development charges on all the units being built by the federal government, but that will be offset by the property taxes generated on the market units that they are building. The total commitment from the city is between $200 to $245 million in waived taxes, fees, and other charges. But let's be clear about the structure of the agreement. We're receiving $150 million upfront to build affordable and supportive homes. We are not putting any cash into this agreement. We are simply foregoing future revenue. All of it is revenue that we would not collect if these homes were not being built. And a huge portion is going to reducing the cost of affordable and supportive homes, so the residents of those homes will pay less. Another important part of this agreement is a new unprecedented approach to housing development on public lands. The city will work in lockstep with BCH, giving them a priority path forward on their development applications. City staff will fully support and guide BCH through this process. We will play a constructive role in solving development roadblocks, moving their projects forward as quickly as possible. No other city in Canada is doing this. We are leading the way. And we are ready to support other municipalities so they too can strike these kinds of deals with the federal government. As I mentioned, several cities have already reached out to see how they can advance similar agreements. On paper, the value of this agreement is about $400 million. However, if you include land, labor, material, and financing, the actual value of what the federal government is contributing is more than $1 billion. That's an enormous investment into our local economy. Cela représente l'un des plus importants.
This represents one of the best commitments in the history of our city.
Largest public commitments to building homes in our city's history. Combined with the recent commitments by the federal and provincial governments to reduce development charges and to eliminate the GST on new homes, and our own extremely ambitious and effective housing action plan, we are clearing the way to build thousands more homes in our city. This agreement required immense cooperation and collaboration to get here. I'm grateful to Council for the clear, unambiguous, and united support. I also want to thank the team in my office and the city staff who worked tirelessly on this. Debbie Stewart, Will McDonald, and Marcia Wallace, thank you for coming together to develop a proposal and negotiate with BCH on such a remarkable deal. The city owes you and your teams a debt of gratitude. Because of your hard work, thousands of families will be housed and housed more affordably in the years and decades to come. I want to take a minute to thank Prime Minister Carney. The Prime Minister has been a steadfast partner throughout this process. He has shown a determination to act and to act quickly. His team, including Minister Robertson, have been equally determined. Thank you as well to Anna Bailau and the team at BCH for working diligently and quickly on an agreement that will be the model for the rest of the country. Now, I've mentioned a lot of numbers and data, but let's remember why we're doing this. Let's think about the impact of the housing crisis on thousands of people in our community, our neighbors. Pensez au nombre de personnes.
Think about all of the people who will be able to be helped with this agreement.
Benefit from this agreement. Imagine a young family moving into their first home. Imagine an individual who's been struggling to find help and support, finally getting the supportive housing unit he or she requires. That is what this agreement is all about. When I ran for office, this is exactly the kind of outcome that I was hoping to achieve. To work collaboratively with partners at all levels of government, to have an impact, to change lives, to solve problems, to help the most vulnerable, to restore the dream of living in a home, of home ownership, of affordable housing, to make a difference. We have a chance to do all of that today. We have a chance to help thousands of people. Nous avons aujourd'hui l'occasion.
We have the opportunity today to help thousands of people.
We have a chance to move forward with a truly historic deal. So let's get started. I will turn it over to our city manager to begin the presentation.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Merci, Monsieur le Maire. Staff are before you today following that historic announcement of a partnership in December 2025 between the City of Ottawa and the Government of Canada through Build Canada Homes to significantly accelerate construction of mixed income housing in Ottawa, which includes both affordable and supportive housing units. And I want to take a moment to express my thanks to Mayor and to Council for their leadership in prioritizing housing solutions in the City of Ottawa, and to the federal government for their partnership on this matter. The city is going to greatly benefit by participating in this partnership. First, it's going to position Ottawa as a leader in the federal government's new housing delivery model. And second, it's going to keep housing construction going in our city while the private market is slowing. And finally, it's going to help secure long-term affordability through the construction of mixed-income communities, including deeply and affordable homes. And I just want to say my sincere thank you to staff who you see at this table who have worked hard and tirelessly on the deal that's before you today, and also to those behind the scenes who you don't see at the table today for the work that they've done to bring forward the report and the deal with respect to the discussion that's going to be had at committee. I'm going to hand it over to Debbie and her team to kick off the presentation. Thank you very much. Merci.
Merci, Wendy. Je m'appelle Debbie Stewart.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm Debbie Stewart, the Director of Strategic Initiatives. It is with great pleasure that I will present to you the partnership with Build Canada Homes.
Will McDonald, who is the Director of Strategic Projects Office and has played a key role in terms of getting us to this point and in terms of the report that was presented to you. Also joined at the table and will be presenting today is Isabel Jasmine, Deputy City Treasurer Finance. She will be presenting as well. And then we have Cyril Rogers, Tammy Rose, and Marcia Wallace here to respond to questions. I want to ensure that you're aware that we also have Valessa Faria, the Senior Vice President of Partnership and Development from Build Canada Homes online and available to respond to questions as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Will to begin the presentation. Thank you.
Mayor, members of the Joint Committee, the proposed partnership with Build Canada Homes includes a joint investment to create a pipeline to build up to 3,000 new mixed income and affordable homes. Sorry, if we can move forward one slide. Thank you. 2,000 homes will be constructed by BCH on surplus federal lands, including 1,200 market and low-end market units, a target of 800 affordable units, and a target of 200 deeply affordable units to ensure housing availability for low and very low income households. As we'll discuss further in this presentation, the inclusion of these deeply affordable units was a significant outcome, given the level of affordability is not usually achievable without rent supplements. BCH will also be prioritizing the development of 3- and 4-bedroom family size units, aiming to exceed the minimum requirements of the zoning bylaw. The partnership will include funding to advance 1,000 nonprofit homes from the city's affordable housing pipeline, and will include requirements to generate long-term, predictable demand for Canadian factory-built housing, Canadian lumber, and Canadian materials. Next slide, please. The Build Canada Homes model aims to create housing developments with a mix of market affordable and deeply affordable housing in a single development. Given the financial challenges of delivering homes for low and very low income households, the range of rent levels allows higher rents to cross-subsidize more deeply affordable units in perpetuity. In addition, mixed income housing promotes social inclusion, improves life outcomes, and supports economic productivity by providing housing options for a diverse workforce. Although not often seen in Canada, this mixed income model has proven quite successful elsewhere. Next slide, please. Creating sustainable, affordable housing requires addressing both the cost to build, such as land, construction, financing, and soft costs, and the cost to operate a project. Sorry, we've gone forward one slide too many. Can we go ahead one? One more, please. There we go. Apologies, we're out of order. So the cost to create sustainable, affordable housing requires addressing both the cost to build, such as the land, construction, financing, and soft costs, and the cost to operate the project. Both levels of government are stepping up with the tools and incentives to help reduce these costs and ensure the viability of long-term affordability for these projects. The estimated cost to develop a typical 2,000-unit housing development is $1.2 billion, or approximately $600,000 a unit. Build Canada Homes will be providing the land, financing, and capital to construct these homes and will ensure their affordability for 99 years. The city's contribution consists of waiving fees and charges to make building less expensive and a tailored approval and permitting process to make the overall process faster. This includes waiving development charges, community benefit charges, cash in lieu of parkland, building permit fees, and planning fees. The estimated value of this contribution is $65 million, but much of this is already required legislatively for nonprofits or units with rents less than average market rent. In addition, this is conditioned on the property continuing to be owned by the federal government. Were BCH to sell the property to the private sector at the end of the affordability period, the funds would be recouped. The contribution equates to approximately $81,000 per affordable unit, which is significantly lower than the typical city-administered capital supplement for affordable units of $250,000 per unit. The city would also be waiving property taxes for affordable units for 75 years to help keep the operating costs of these units low. This equates to $2,900 a unit per year for the 75-year period for a total of $135 to $185 million. The total value of the city's contribution is $200 to $245 million and shall not exceed $250 million. Next slide, please. I believe it's now 2 back. Thank you. Build Canada Homes has identified 1495 Heron and Phase 7 of Wateridge Village as the initial sites for development under the partnership. These sites are at locations that have existing infrastructure to support the developments and are large enough to incorporate parks and other amenities. So even though cash in lieu of parkland has been waived as part of this partnership, it would not have been required for these sites. The tailored approval process and permitting process that has been established for this partnership also ensures that these resulting communities are livable, vibrant, and consistent with the city's environmental and design expectations. The process includes Build Canada Homes and the city undertaking joint public consultations to ensure the community understands what is being proposed for these sites and can provide input before planning decisions are made and site plans are finalized. Next slide, please. So one more. Thank you. I'll now pass it over to Isabel Jasmine.
Thank you, Will. So the city's estimated contribution is between 200 and 245 million, most of which is leveraging existing statutory and city policies for fee exemptions available to affordable housing and nonprofit housing providers. This contribution does not create any additional budget pressure since it is simply foregone revenue for new units that would not have been built if not for this partnership. Most of these exemptions are statutory, and for those that are discretionary, we would not offset the foregone revenue with taxpayer dollars. Exemptions provided to private sector developers are required to make the overall funding model for this mixed income and affordable housing concept work. We would create development charge exemption zones to allow for these discretionary exemptions. BCH would own the sites and lease to a nonprofit service provider to operate the affordable units. Property tax exemptions would only be given to nonprofit operators and only for those units that meet the city's affordable housing definition. Foregone revenue is not a budget pressure if it was not planned for, and any additional costs would be offset by savings or cost avoidance. We would prioritize sites with existing infrastructure and parks to minimize the pressure on development charges in CILP. CPCs not received are not spent. Building permit costs would be covered by the BCS Revenue Stabilization Reserve, and planning fees can be eliminated because the process will be completely streamlined, eliminating many of the processing costs. The commitment to maintain affordable rents for 75 years would add up to total exemptions of an estimated 135 million to 180 million, including education taxes. These are exemptions that the city would already provide to nonprofit affordable housing. These exemptions would add up to roughly 1.5 to 2 million annually in foregone tax revenue. However, the new property taxes expected from the market units are projected to be between 234 to 273 million over the 75 years, or roughly 3 to 3.6 million annually in municipal taxes. The contribution is expected to be budget neutral. The new property tax is actual new tax revenue that will be received by the city once these sites are built. Another important point to note is that we are foregoing 200 to 245 million in revenue that would not have otherwise materialized, while BCH is contributing 150 million in funding to the city's pipeline in cash and financing that directly benefits construction of those units. Debbie will now describe that direct investment in more detail on the next slide.
So also part of this partnership is a 150 million commitment by Build Canada Homes to close the funding gap for projects in the municipal nonprofit affordable housing pipeline. This investment, when combined with municipal and other partner investments, will see 1,000 nonprofit homes, including supportive housing, begin construction in the next 12 months. Council most recently endorsed the nonprofit affordable housing pipeline this past fall via the Affordable Housing Capital Strategy. When selecting projects for this partnership, there were several clear selection criteria. The key one being that projects must be nonprofit-led and shovel-ready within 12 months. Build Canada Homes was also looking for projects from a range of providers. Staff included all projects from the council-approved pipeline that met the criteria and whose proponents agreed to have their projects included. We also included projects that were shovel-ready and under consideration for funding by the city, but not yet approved by council. The shortlist under this partnership includes 10 projects totaling 1,320 homes. This includes 4 Ottawa community housing projects representing about 40% of the units. There are also just over 200 supportive housing units included in this shortlist. Next slide, please. In terms of the capital for the 1,000 homes from the municipal pipeline, the primary funders are the federal government and the municipality. Some projects also have provincial funding under the Building Faster Fund. All projects are shovel-ready, many have building permits, but all of the projects had a funding gap that prevented them from moving their project forward to completion. On the federal side of the funding equation, in addition to the $150 million BCH commitment, many projects also have funding from the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. On the municipal side, municipal contributions of $80 million from all city-administered sources, Building Faster Fund, Housing Acceleration Fund, and Municipal Capital, and they also have waivers of planning fees, charges, and taxes. Next slide, please. This slide looks at what is accomplished overall through this partnership. In total, the Ottawa Build Canada Homes Partnership supports 3,000 new homes in Ottawa. There are 1,300 affordable and supportive units. There are 1,700 homes that are market or the low end of market. So what I mean by that is that they may not meet the affordability definition, but they're below what the market produces and lists the rents at today. This partnership will more than match the number of affordable units funded this term of council, and council was able to accomplish a lot this term. It is also a more efficient investment, meaning that foregone revenues under this partnership are less than the capital investments that would otherwise have been required to achieve this number of units and this level of affordability. I also want to note that this is a good mix and a good blend of affordability. Research led by a federal, provincial, territorial working group determined that affordable housing projects with between 30 and 40% of their units deemed affordable and the rest at market or near market levels were financially viable and sustainable. They're able to maintain the building's condition at acceptable standards throughout their life cycle. We also know from research and international examples that projects that offer a full range of rents, from deeply affordable to market, produce better economic and social outcomes. Communities that can house the full breadth of workforce are more economically productive. These communities are also more vibrant and dynamic because of their inclusivity. This type of mix of affordability has not been achieved at scale in Canada, and we're hopeful that this partnership, so council endorse it, will see this type of truly mixed income housing community realized in the city. Next slide, please. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the definition of affordable housing because this is a key issue, and it's the fact that there's 2 definitions has been a little confusing. But the reason for this is really simple. This is a partnership, and the 2 organizations in this partnership have adopted different definitions that we both want reflected in the agreements. So the definitions differ in methodology, but they're both valid and have similar policy intents. Let me talk first about how they're similar. First, both definitions use income-based thresholds, with households not paying more than 30% of gross household income for housing. This is important, and it's a good thing. It ensures that there's sufficient income left over after the rent is paid for food and other necessities of life. Both definitions target very low, low, and moderate income households. So that means people receiving ODSP benefits, minimum wage workers, teachers and firefighters, and other early career professionals benefit. So I'll now move into how they're different. So they're different in the way that we define very low to moderate income earners. The city definition uses income deciles, targeting the 1st to 6th decile in Ottawa. Bill Canada Homes uses a percent of median household income for Ottawa. And then the Bill Canada Homes model becomes more precise and considers the household size and the number of bedrooms required to adequately house that household. It's based on the HART model developed by Dr. Carolyn Wiseman out of University of British Columbia, and it is becoming widely adopted in Canada now. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to use this table to give an example. It's based on moderate income earners. So how does the Bill Canada Homes definition work? First, it considers household size. So as an example, let's take a 2-person household in need of a 1-bedroom apartment. So think of a couple looking for a 1-bedroom apartment. For Bill Canada Homes, moderate income is defined as households who earn between 51 and 75% of median household income for Ottawa. The Bill Canada Homes model then gets even more precise. It uses data for 2-person households. So 51 to 75% of median income for a 2-person household. And then it calculates affordability based on the size of a home that household needs. So in this example, it's a couple who needs a 1-bedroom apartment. The most that couple can afford to pay for a 1-bedroom apartment is $1,474 per month. If you take the city's definition, the most that a moderate income couple, based on the income deciles, can afford to pay for a 1-bedroom apartment is between $1,581 to $2,305. So it's technical, but the key takeaway is that the definitions are similar and produce similar results. There are times when the Bill Canada Homes model produces higher maximum affordable rents, and there are times when the city's definition produces higher maximum affordable rents, but both are valid. And because this is income-based, there are times when the market can provide homes at rents that are affordable to people at the upper end of the moderate. This is the case for both the city definition and for the Bill Canada Homes definition. And this factor is controlled for in this partnership. There are no homes under this model that are able to be provided by the market that will be counted as an affordable home. I think that's an important point to stress. It is a key part of this agreement. So I'm just going to take one final moment on this slide. I've also included average market rent. It's something that we talk about a lot, AMR. It's another common measure used to define affordable housing. It's based on the average of all the rents paid in the city. It's a CMHC survey that produces the data. It's not the same as what you would find if you're looking to rent a home. That is what we call listed rents. So if you were to go on to rental.ca or Zumper and you were to look for a 1-bedroom apartment, you're not going to find anything listed at these rents. AMR includes all rents paid currently in the city. For example, apartment rents that are still rent protected are counted in that. So the reason I've included all these definitions and spent time on it is because it is complex, but also because we are recommending that Council exempt this partnership from the current affordable definition used in the bylaw that allows for property tax exemption. That bylaw is currently based on average market rent. So that's the bottom row on the table. We require the exemption to accommodate the city's new definition and the Bill Canada Homes definition. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to conclude the presentation with a quick review of the recommendations. So the recommendations are approve the partnership with Bill Canada Homes, delegate authority to the General Manager Strategic Initiatives to conclude the MOU based on the terms in the report, delegate authority to the General Manager Planning, Development and Building Services to implement the tailored approval process so that these homes can be built quickly, approve exemption to the Municipal Capital Housing Facility bylaw for this partnership to contribute to the mixed income housing model, specifically the definition of affordability, the requirement to draw from the wait list if it's required, and an exemption to the provider requirements if required. This is not likely because the intent is to ensure that the affordable homes are administered by nonprofits. We're requesting this flexibility in the event that some of the affordable units are administered by a private sector entity. And then finally, delegate authority to the Director of Housing Solutions, Real Estate and Investments to conclude discussions with Build Canada Homes to select the final projects from the municipal nonprofit affordable housing pipeline from the short list that was shared to receive Build Canada housing funding. Next slide, please. Recommend approval to of the city contribution valued at up to $250 million to the federal developments by exempting all units from development charges, community benefit charges, property taxes on affordable units for 75 years, waive collection of cash in lieu of parkland if required, and building permit fees. Collection of planning fees will not be required as a result of the tailored process that is developed to reflect the partnership arrangement. And this concludes today's presentation. We're pleased to respond to questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation and again for all of your hard work. We do have 3 delegations, so we'll go to those now, starting with Reese Phillips. Good morning, Mr. Phillips. Just turn the microphone on there in front of you, if you would. Great. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Reese Phillips. I've been writing on architecture, urban design, and city building for more than 35 years from Ottawa, including over 2 decades as a contributing editor to Building Magazine. So my comments today draw on that long-time research, interviewing, and writing on how cities grow, how urban housing models succeed or fail, and how design and policy can interact to build strong working cities. I want to speak to 3 points briefly in the report. 1 is affordable housing definition, 2 is the official plan's 15-minute communities commitment, and 3rd, building better through modern construction technologies. First, the definition used in this report represent, I think, a meaningful improvement of over those used, for example, in the Odenic Towers. That they include deep affordability for households under $30,000 is particularly important. But one essential component, somewhat underplayed, I think, is supportive housing, requiring 24/7 services. Finland's Homes First program, widely regarded as one of the most successful homeless strategies in the world, has found roughly 20% of homeless clients require this level of support. Ottawa is seeing the consequences of not providing it as individuals with high needs are being placed in general non-market buildings, creating challenges for tenants, operators, and even neighborhoods. Build Canada Homes has committed $1 billion nationally to supportive housing. Ottawa should ensure this tool is fully used on federal lands being developed. My second point is that the number and speed of units, while important, cannot become the only measure of success. The federal sites, the major federal sites, Heron Road, Tunney's Pastures, and Confederation Heights, are major opportunities to build complete 15-minute communities connected by transit, not simply to add unit counts. Heron Road is already identified as a priority site. My analysis of this site, as well as Confederation Heights, in tandem with surrounding communities, indicates the possibility of excellent urban-oriented development if done right. Existing Water Ridge needs significant tweaking. After 9 years of development, only 3 of the 9 amenities identified in the city's 15-minute community baseline study are present. Grocery stores and retail, including a true Main Street, are 2 of the top 3 amenities identified in a public survey that are still missing. The walkability score remains only moderate because there is no continuous retail frontage, no active ground floors, large setbacks, a loose block structure, and many buildings are set back behind landscaping or parking pads. A rethink is called for. These federal sites can and should become model urban communities. The new zoning bylaws Main Street and minor corridor classifications strengthens this potential, including for surrounding neighborhoods. And if Ottawa wants intensification to succeed, especially for young families increasingly open to urban multi-unit living, buildings must offer livability, meaning larger units, good and well-scaled design, public spaces, and access to amenities and nature. Height alone cannot deliver the kind of urban life that reduces car dependence and supports thriving communities. Examples exist. European cities and even private developments in Gatineau, like Agora and Burgill's proposed mall conversion, are achieving density through mid-rise perimeter block forms and carless streets, often with naturalized urbanism. The latter involves integrating nature with services and urban housing in ways that support daily life. To achieve this model, Burgill is using the world-renowned Danish landscape firm SLA, who are also doing the CLC's Downview development in Toronto. Finally, building better means improving construction productivity historically low to grow in Canada. The Build Canada Homes strategy the Build Canada Home strategy recognizes this and has committed significant resources to expanding prefab and modular capacity, including both dimensional lumber and mass timber. This report appears to be fully on side on this. And Ottawa, Ontario, and Quebec already have meaningful, underused capacity in these sectors. This is not only about faster and cheaper delivery, it also affects more broadly for Canada high value-added manufacturing growth, software tariff exposure, and green performance. So I'll finish with 3 points. Include more supportive housing, rigorously apply the 15-minute community model with good consultation with the surrounding affected communities, and 3, have BCH and CLC rewrite the already issued but weak statement of qualifications to ensure a more complete vetting of experiences in non-market housing, 15-minute urban design, and prefab and modular technology. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Councillor Kavanaugh?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Phillips, for coming out. I appreciate your point about 15-minute neighborhoods, and I think that's a question we can ask staff in terms of these communities. But I just wanted to mention that this is an interesting segue, because we just had a health and housing symposium this morning to talk about many of the points you've raised in terms of supportive housing and blending in the needs of health concerns with housing, that supportive housing is a big part of it. So I just wanted, I don't know if you're aware of that, but that is something we're quite aware of. Ottawa Community Housing was the lead on this, and it's certainly a mandate that we're pushing with the city, and they were very much partners.
I'm on the Hindenburg Community Association boards. We have a security subgroup, and they've had significant problems with our non-market housing units, where a lot of people in there have experienced very significant problems with putting people who require 24/7 services. And I know from the other communities they're facing the same thing.
Yeah, we're getting off topic, but definitely. Actually, I've worked on a meeting that addressed that very concern right in Hindenburg. So I'm very aware of that, and this is why we need more supportive housing and different models. But thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Phillips. Appreciate you being here. Next is Tone Dreesen. Is he online? No? Okay, we will go next to Tammy Eads and Nicole Christie from the Ottawa Real Estate Board. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and members of the Joint Committee. My name is Tammy Eads, and I am the president of the Ottawa Real Estate Board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the Build Canada Homes Partnership. I want to begin by recognizing the leadership of First Mayor council, and city staff. If there is one issue that consistently comes up in conversations across this city, it is housing. People are worried about whether they can afford the dream of home ownership and whether they can find an affordable place to rent. And the data that we have confirms that. More than 80% of residents are concerned about the state of housing, and 2/3 say that housing is unaffordable in their community. Moreover, 60% of residents say that even a modest change in their financial situation could put their housing at risk. And among those who do not yet own a home, more than half are pessimistic about ever being able to buy one. So the question before us is not whether we need to act. It is whether we are prepared to act at the scale and the speed required. Housing has become one of the defining challenges facing Ottawa, and this report reflects a serious and sustained effort to respond. The Ottawa Real Estate Board supports this partnership. We support it because it reflects what we have consistently been advocating for, which is coordinated action across governments, practical solutions to increase supply, and a willingness to address barriers that prevent homes from being built. And importantly, this position is grounded in evidence. Through our research done in conjunction with Abacus data, residents are clear about the urgency of the housing challenge and what is driving it. They point out to three main pressures. 1, not enough housing is being built. 2, the high cost of construction. And 3, the supply not keeping pace with demand. The Build Canada Homes Partnership is a coordinated delivery model backed by up to $400 million in combined federal and municipal investments designed to support the construction of up to 3,000 homes across Ottawa, meant to increase rental supply and improve affordability. The federal government is contributing land, capital, and financing to bring projects forward, while the city is using the tools it controls to make those projects viable and faster to deliver. That includes development charge exemptions, fee waivers, a streamlined approval process, a long-term property tax relief for affordable units. Unlocking surplus federal land combined with financing tools and municipal support is a practical way to increase supply and deliver mixed-income communities, and that matters. When people cannot find housing they can afford, it affects employers, it affects labor mobility, and it affects the long-term resilience of the city. This partnership helps address that by supporting construction activity now, maintaining momentum in the sector, and ensuring that supply continues to come online. There is no single solution to Ottawa's housing challenges, but progress comes from practical, coordinated actions like this. This partnership aligns land, funding, approvals, and policy tools in a way that is focused on delivery. This is exactly the kind of alignment that ORAB has been calling for. It recognizes that improving housing outcomes requires action on both sides of the equation, reducing costs of the building and improving the speed and predictability of the approvals. And importantly, it brings those elements together in a way that focused on actually getting homes built. ORAB would also like to acknowledge the city's proposal to exempt development charges, eliminate planning and building permit fees, and introduce a more streamlined approvals process for these projects. If we want more housing, particularly affordable housing, we need a system where it is actually possible to build it. And residents understand this. This partnership also reflects another important principle, which is the strategic use of public land. It reflects many of the solutions ORAB has been advocating for, including reducing development-related costs, improving timelines, and increasing supply across the housing continuum. It also demonstrates what is possible when governments move beyond individual tools and work together towards shared outcomes. ORAB supports the Build Canada Homes Partnership and we encourage the committee and council to move forward with it. Thank you. If there are any questions?
Thank you. Councillor Plante?
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I just had a quick question because, and I hope you'll indulge me just for a second, Mr. Mayor. It has to do with the topic, but oftentimes when, in my experience, and I was part of the community association before my election, the people sort of leading the charge against all of the things that you are talking about are often real estate agents. And I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm not, I was just wondering, does your organization do any kind of training or to talk about the wonderful things you're just proposing, which are great. And I wish more real estate agents spoke positively in that way about things like intensification and building more homes. I was wondering if your organization does anything around that.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I'm Nicole Christie. I'm the CEO of the Ottawa Real Estate Board. We certainly do provide education sessions on legislation, regulations, zoning, bylaws, and the things that we need to move on housing supply. As an organization, we certainly support those things. We know individuals are also homeowners. They're also folks who live in communities and they may have their own personal concerns or considerations when it comes to density, intensification, and some of the things that are being proposed, whether it's in the new zoning bylaw or in some of these programs that we're moving forward on now. So we can't speak to individual agents, and certainly there are concerns that they may have as other entities, but as an organization, we know that to solve the challenges that we're facing, we do have to look at solutions that add density, add intensification, and move the needle forward in ways that we know we need to do, and it'll be better overall for society.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us today.
Mayor, I'll just ask a quick question. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry about
I didn't
that.
see your hand up.
I raised
All
my
right.
hand late.
Okay.
No
Councilman
worries. I just wanted to chat about the number of listings that we have on the MLS and in Ontario and in Canada. Because so much of this, it's funny when you think about it, right? Because it's so much is based on the listing price of homes that are available for sale. That's a very small percentage of the total home base, and how you can change that home to have other units in it, or to adjust those homes that maybe are not for sale to be, I guess, put into the market. So just how are home listings doing? Like I know in 2023, for example, we had such a dip in the amount of people that wanted to list their home. It was so low. So the market was very, I guess, a lot less out there for people to purchase. That affects, of course, prices in terms of supply available for sale. So how are things looking now in terms of supply available for sale in Ontario, and how is that potentially affecting prices?
Certainly, and I can speak more specifically about the examples in Ottawa and the Ottawa numbers. It is a bit of a different situation across the province. We see some of the information coming out of some of the larger municipalities like Toronto, where they are seeing greater struggles in certain segments of their market, especially. In Ottawa, we've certainly seen the sales decrease over the past number of months. We've seen higher levels of inventory, which has been, for many, a little bit of a blessing, because we did have a really tight market. So there is opportunities now on the buyer side to get things like housing or home inspections, to have more conditions, to have more time to consider, and to have more options when you're looking at a home that's for sale. But there are certain segments that are struggling more than others. We are seeing a little bit more struggles in the condo market, for instance, and there are factors that are feeding into that. Certainly, there are less demand for some of those units, because some of them are units that are for sale. They're investor units, for instance, and with less students, with less immigration, you are seeing more vacancy. You're also seeing, then you're seeing people trying to put those things on the market, and there's just more supply, more availability on the market for those segments. The single family homes and the townhomes, or the missing middle, are keeping a lot of our numbers higher than you're seeing across the province. There's still a lot of demand. We're still seeing the price sticky in those segments. So that means that it hasn't seen the decreases that you're seeing in some of the other segments. So that's supporting the values of homes, especially in those areas. But it is relatively local. So you'll see some communities doing better than others, but we can certainly speak to any of those. And if any councillors would like more specific details about their communities, we can have those conversations with you.
That's great. No, that's really helpful. I think the what's being built these days has shifted so much as well. It used to be there was a huge building of condos. That's where the market was. That's completely shifted now. Now purpose built rental is much greater than it was in the past. How does that affect, in your view, I guess pricing and availability? A lot of what this is doing is a lot of market units. Some of it's below market, but a lot of this is market units that we're talking about here today. So on the market units, on the purpose-built rental, what does that do to prices? I guess and rents, that sort of thing.
We are seeing a reduction in rents. We are seeing the rents starting to decrease. You're also seeing more of the incentives. I'm not sure if many of you have seen some of the signs up on some of the larger purpose-built rental units. They are offering 1 or 2 months of free rent, for instance, for a contract signed. So you're seeing that the vacancies are creating some changes in the market and opportunities for people to get in. Are prices still relatively high? Yes, they still are, but you are seeing, and it was one of the nice things that we saw about 1.5 years, 2 years ago in Ottawa, is a lot of the developments that were slated for condos shifted quickly to rental. They saw where the market was going in Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, and they made that shift. We have smaller projects typically in Ottawa. You don't have the 50-story buildings as often as you see in some of the other places. So it's easier for our developers to shift, and they made a lot of those shifts. So that has helped, I think, keep the prices, even though our prices in the segment, the condo segment, are a bit depressed, not as depressed as you're seeing in other markets. And I think it's from that shift. But certainly as more rental comes online, you are going to see more vacancies, more availability, and that is going to help bring some of the prices down. But there are some areas of the city where they're still going to be tight because there isn't enough building in that area. A lot of the communities where families would like to be, some of the more suburban communities, we might need to see other solutions to add gentle density because we don't have the purpose-built rental coming into those areas. So we'll have to find other creative solutions to kind of fill the gaps.
Yeah, one of the things I've talked a lot with staff about is because we're very focused on what happens in the market, and we're at whim of developers who want to build and if they have the money to build or not. But having a public developer that can help on the public side to fill in some of those gaps where you're not necessarily seeing developers build because of fundamentals or whatever it might be. Nice to have a public model too that can help assist in those gap areas. So thank you very much for that insight. Appreciate being here.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us today. I understand Tone Dreesen is online. We'll go back to him. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me here. Apologies, I have a written submission, but I wasn't able to get the submission in because we only had 3 business days to put this response together. So the written submission will follow by email if that's acceptable. I'm generally supportive of affordable housing, and generally I think there's a lot to love in the approach to build Canada homes. I do have a few concerns that I'd like to table. One is that the issue of the affordability metric, I think, needs to be rethought. Only about 10% of the homes that are proposed are deeply affordable, and there is a difference in the metric of how the City of Ottawa and BCH are calculating affordability that I think needs to be rethought, because we need to be delivering more affordable homes, and only 10% being deeply affordable, I think, is problematic for the challenges that we're seeing in Ottawa. The other sort of major issue for me is the planning approvals process. Under this proposal, the planning general manager of planning is given latitude to implement a tailored approval process. And I agree that I think that's fantastic. But it's worth noting that the planning approval process is something that the Ontario Association of Architects, of whom I am a past president, has been advocating for change since 2014. And based on the current reporting of this, land use planning approvals add upwards of $400,000 in cost to every home in construction through unnecessary planning delays. And that is something that is entirely within the power of the City of Ottawa to advocate for change. And we should be seeing faster planning approvals delivered across not just the construction sector as a whole, but specifically on housing. There's no reason for land use planning approvals to take more than 4 to 6 months, and they frequently take, on average in Ontario, take 23 months, and that's the average. So we could really address affordability of homes if we could address the planning proposal changes that have been documented and independently audited and verified by the Ontario Association of Architects since 2014. I would also like the consideration to be made for thinking about how we address the cost of funding support for this. It seems that the only lever that's being pulled is waiver of development charges and property taxes for 75 years. And, that's property taxes are one thing, but there's nothing in the BCH proposal. And believe me, I read through it thoroughly looking to build a team to respond to it. But there's nothing in it that really addresses the sustainability of homes being constructed. 80% of the cost of a building happens after it's constructed. And there's nothing in the BCH proposal that speaks to things like a decarbonized building, zero operational carbon, a higher durability standard that provides increased value and decreased operating cost. As an example, we've worked on projects where going to a decarbonized fossil fuel-free operations is a 6 to 7 year return on investment. And that has a life cycle value. And that's not even mentioned in the BCH proposals. There's nothing talking about this. So these are levers that I think the City of Ottawa could pull to have a really substantial impact on the operating cost above and beyond property taxes, because just cutting the property taxes alone is really going to decrease the opportunities for building social infrastructure like community centers and libraries and parks that all residents of the city will benefit from. And by waiving these costs and these development charges is going to have a negative impact on the construction and funding of social infrastructure for the city. The other challenge I have is that the way this project is put together, it is a single contractor that is being acquired for the project. The project is a number of smaller buildings, and there's no reason to imagine that this couldn't be carved up into smaller projects overseen by an overall contractor or a smaller group of contractors. But the way it's structured right now, there are going to be no local firms that can contribute to the design of this building. It is structured as a single large entity, so it will be a very large conglomerate multinational architecture and engineering firm that is retained to do this, with virtually no job creation, no economic activity at a local level, which really flies in the face of council and city's decisions and advocacy for shopping local and local engagement and local business. So that's a real detractor for me, because small firms that create the cultural identity for a city are frozen out by the sort of mass market approach that's taken to this. And the last piece that I just want to flag is that the building.
You're at time.
Am I time? Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay. I apologize. All right. Councillor Menard.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thanks, Tone, for being here. I read your submission as well with more details in it that you had sent to council. Thank you for taking the time to look through this. I wanted to ask you about two things. Number one, you mentioned, and I really agree about the cost after the build is done. It's something we've been talking about here. Affordability is not just on, say, the purchase of a home. It is, so much of it is how you operate that place, the mortgage costs and every other cost with heating, hydro, water, etc. afterwards for however long that person lives there. So when you mention that it's the operational costs, which sustainability and efficiency up front in the build would help with so much to lower those costs for people that are purchasing that home or living in it and renting it. What do you mean in terms of what would actually help that up front to lower those costs?
Well, it would be things like not having fossil fuel dependence for heating and cooling, having heat pumps, having at scale, whether it's on-site electricity generation, having improved building envelopes so that it's more thermally resistant, so it loses less heat, gains less heat in the summer, loses less heat in the winter, solar orientation, durability of the building. So, is the building something that can be maintained easily and cost effectively, or do you have to dismantle half the building to replace the roof? There are so many challenges to making those decisions that need to be thought about up front. Fundamental things like, is it cleanable? Design of a space so that it's cleanable, so that it's maintainable. These are sort of basic things that if it's not thought about up front, if it's hard to maintain, people won't maintain it. And if we don't think about those things, we don't bake in that standard. Like, for example, in the reference letter, there's a CAN-CSA durability standard that is part of the building code and is actually something that architects are required by law to comply with in the building code, but nobody enforces it. And it's a standard that we could choose to affect. It's a standard we could choose to implement, for a building design perspective, but we don't. Our approach is to do the minimum.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I mean, it makes so much more sense to put in those initial sustainability investments up front rather than do retrofits later on, and of course leads to a cost savings. So I appreciate that. The last one I have for you is just around, there's been so much funding thrown towards private development around GST, DCs, et cetera, and it continues. I'm skeptical that this is going to result in this massive affordability. I'm sure it will help a little bit with supply, but whether that helps with affordability or not, there are so many other factors that I don't think that you can say it's a direct correlation, unfortunately. So just in terms of the actual build out of this and how we structure it, and of course this is like for the future, but having a builder that could, again, take this funding that we have from both the federal government and the city and build this right from the get-go with a not-for-profit goal in mind, instead of all these incentives to incentivize private for-profit building that includes some level of affordability. Would this not be a better model in the future, is to have
Yes.
a public builder that can undertake this type of work, where we're not just throwing and hoping for incentives that people are going to come and build and taking money off the tax base?
Absolutely. Absolutely, those are things that could be done. They should be done. The absence of federal participation in public housing and housing construction since the 1990s is well documented. I won't repeat that here. But, for me, a fundamental is that we're waiving the property tax. And, in the submission that was made at 10 o'clock last Thursday night, it says that that'll save $2,900 per year for each average apartment. But it's a rental apartment. If you're a renter, you're not noticing whether or not there's property tax in your monthly rent. There's no guarantee that will turn into a discount for the end user, for the tenant. It might have an impact if it was a sold condo unit, but it's not going to have that sort of direct impact. Where we'd see that would be in individual rental apartment utility bills. Each tenant gets their own electricity bill and can see that they're saving money because it's a more efficient, more energy efficient building. They're seeing that they're getting no gas bill that's prorated for their square footage because there is no gas bill for the building. They're seeing that their building is durable and there's no increases in rent to offset the cost of excessive maintenance. So these are things that I think are things that we could pull levers on, that we could benefit and create a better place. And to the extent that there is this sort of organization that's building this, then there should be a contribution in part to build public infrastructure like parks and libraries that aren't just for the building tenants that are I think privately owned public spaces. It shouldn't be just those spaces, but there should be space that's created for all residents of the city to enjoy a socially rich, culturally diverse public space that is part of a building structure. And I think a nonprofit housing structure, whether that's through Ottawa Community Housing or other organizations, there is a real opportunity to do this well and to do this right. And I think it behooves us to get it right.
Thank you. Thanks very much for being here. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Dreesen.
Thank you, sirs. Bye.
All right, I will open it up for, oh, actually, before I open it up, I know Councillor Johnson has a motion. Maybe you could introduce that now, Councillor Johnson, and then as people put up their hands, it could be part of the discussion.
Thanks. If I could get it on the screen, that would be great. Whereas the report Build Canada Homes Partnership notes that BCH will not be required to submit an application and associated studies, but will provide the equivalent information required to form a municipally initiated planning recommendation for council. BCH and city staff will jointly complete public consultation to ensure the community understands what is proposed and can provide input before planning decisions are made and site plans are finalized. However, it will be completed with a compressed timeline, and whereas no details are provided as to how the public will be informed on BCH related development proposals, in what form input will be solicited or toward what end, or on the timelines for consultation that will be considered appropriate and acceptable. Therefore, be it resolved that the general manager report back by way of memo to council in the second quarter of 2026 with a clear engagement strategy aligned with the recently refreshed public engagement strategy, principles and approaches. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'll open it up for questions and comments, and I'm going to try to go to committee members first, but I might forget sometimes. Chair Leeper.
Thank you very much, Mayor. So I know all my colleagues have questions. I know we're going to go through a lot of these, so I'm only going to ask a couple to start off with, and then yield the floor and possibly come back on. The first big one I want to ask about, though, is I have been conceiving since I saw this package of the agreement with the feds. I've been conceiving of this as two streams. There's a really, really welcome $150 million stream to kickstart many more of our pipeline projects. I've been thinking about that as being analogous to the first round of half funding. The feds gave us about $178 million. We put almost all of that into supportive and very affordable housing. This looks like a second round of that. Very welcome news. I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth for $150 million of free money. The other part of it is building the land, or sorry, building out the housing on the surplus lands, where there is a questionably valuable contribution by the city towards getting a lot of private market housing built with probably too little affordable housing. Could they be severed? And I'm asking hypothetically today. I'm going to support this arrangement. But could we say to the feds, we're happy to take your $150 million and build a lot more housing for people who need it, but we're not interested in participating in the surplus lands project. You're going to build that housing anyways, and you're going to make a lot of it affordable because that's your mandate.
Through you, Chair. So the negotiations with Build Canada Homes really are fundamentally about supporting the public builder model at the federal level. So that is what Build Canada Homes is, a public builder model. And they are focusing on developing this truly mixed income model. So these full communities that offer a broad range of rents. And so the primary thrust of this partnership is about working together to enable this new model that will produce 2,000 new rental homes in the city at varying levels of affordability within these sites of the community. And so no, these two, we would not be able to proceed with the 150 without proceeding with the other. It's a combined package.
But many of those pipeline projects are not going to be on federal surplus lands.
The pipeline, so you can look at it, so two streams is a fine way to look at it. It is, but you need to also look at this as an overall package. So we're helping them, they're helping us. So it is very much about, we have this new model. What do we want to be able to include affordable homes, including deeply affordable homes on these sites in perpetuity. So that's what Build Canada Homes wants to do. That is very expensive. They're looking for municipal contribution to help that to be realized. And when we look at the overall contribution that the municipality is being asked to give, it is actually quite reasonable. So it's $65 million to contribute to an overall financing cost to get these homes built of over $1 billion. So it's about $1.2 billion if you use the Altus estimates. And in fact, that, as my colleague Isabel mentioned, most of that or much of that is already legislatively required. And so we would have to do that anyways. As we mentioned in the presentation, some of it, that's a very upper threshold of the municipality's contribution. So we know that the two federal sites that are announced already will include public parks. People will be able to access those parks. They're part of the community design. And so a cash in lieu waiver is not required, but it is counted in that 65 million. But even if we were to average that full 65 million, which we're not going to get to, and apply that to the affordable units, the 800 units, it's still much less than what the municipality typically contributes to enable affordable homes at these levels.
Okay. So I will just ask one of the other additional areas that I have the list on before yielding to my colleagues, but those affordability thresholds, we are proposing, and sorry, I'm going to take this slow. We are proposing to exempt a number of affordable homes on surplus lands from property taxes, correct?
That's correct.
Recommendation 1C is a modification of our bylaw with respect to what qualifies for property tax exemptions for affordable homes.
That's correct.
And the modification that we're making would be to say that it could meet either the federal definition of affordability or it could meet the city definition of affordability, and both would qualify for property tax exemptions on those affordable homes.
On those affordable homes, whether the affordability level is per the city's definition or the Bill Canada Homes definition, they would be exempt.
So I have a bit of discomfort around that one, in that we've seen through your presentation that the federal definition and the municipal definition of affordability can sometimes, there's a significant gap between those. And I'm thinking particularly of those large multi-bedroom units. And the report makes note of the fact that something that qualifies as affordable under the federal threshold may be significantly more affordable than something that qualifies under the city threshold. So on those large multi-bedroom units, which threshold would we consider to be eligible in order to qualify for a property tax exemption?
So I'm going to try and go through that carefully as well, because it is complicated. So the simple answer is that we require the exemption for the Bill Canada Homes and for the city definitions, because currently the definition that is used in a municipal capital housing facility is something that we call average market rent. Average market rent was created by Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. We're moving away from that for a number of reasons, primarily because we want to make sure households can afford the rents. The definitions that are put forward for the purpose of the bylaw is based on ranges of income. And so, for example, for the Bill Canada Homes definition, for moderate, you're talking about 51 to 75% of median income. At the very upper thresholds of that range, it's close, the market is close to being able to provide rents at that level. The agreement with Bill Canada Homes is that those large units, if the market can provide it, it's not counted as the affordable units. We'll just go deeper into that range. So what I mean by that is that there is not going to be any rent that will be excluded from property taxes, or any unit that is rented at a rate that the market can provide that will be excluded from property taxes. Everything is going to be below the market rents. Because we have a range under both the city definition or under the municipal definition, we also need to monitor it relative to what the market provides. And that's part of the agreement. And those rents will not be included. We'll look at deeper affordability wherever that is the case.
So something could be at the highest end of that range and still qualify for a property tax exemption?
If the market is able to produce it at that range, that level, it would not be included in what is defined as affordable, and it would be excluded from property tax exemption.
And I'm sorry, something would be considered affordable under the federal definition at a certain price. Am I right at that?
Yes.
Okay. Where I'm really having difficulties, Ms. Stewart, is trying to understand when would we consider something that it meets the federal definition of affordability to be exempt from property tax versus what you're telling me about here in terms of if the market could provide that.
So what we're requesting is the definitions of affordable are based on income. In all cases, we know that families can't pay more than 30% of their gross household income and on housing, and then afford the other necessities of life, especially at this time when there's affordability pressures kind of everywhere. So it's income-based. In Ottawa, we are looking at what the market provides, and if the market is able to list a rent that falls within that affordability definition, it's not going to be counted as an affordable unit. So let's say that at 75%, let's go at the very upper end of the Build Canada Homes definition. And let's say that for a 2-bedroom unit, because this is the one that I'm watching, at a 2-bedroom unit, the rent that is deemed affordable at the very upper threshold is a rent that the market lists. It's not going to be considered affordable. We'll be looking at the households who are deeper into that moderate income. So we won't be looking at the people who make 75% of moderate. We'll be looking at the people who make 60% of within that threshold because they can't afford the market levels. So we're going to control for what the market provides and exclude those from the benefits that are being requested here. Because it fluctuates, we're asking for that range to be considered. So we're asking for moderate income earners and at 30% of their gross household income to be deemed affordable, and then administer it so that we're controlling for market rents and what the market can provide.
Okay. We're still struggling. So for a 4+ bedroom, the federal definition would consider that it is affordable to somebody, a household with a moderate income, if it rents for $3,300, $3,389. The city definition would say that 30% of for the 5th and 6th deciles, it wouldn't be considered affordable if it rented for more than $2,305. That's a big difference.
That's correct.
Because they take into account the household size. We're just doing a straight without taking into account to it. And so I think what I'm pushing back at here, what I'm uncomfortable with, is that it seems like we are poised to provide property tax exemptions for large multi-bedroom units for which we are not insisting on the city definition of affordability, which would be significantly less than the federal definition.
Through the chair. So in the case of a 4-bedroom unit, if market listed rents for a 4-bedroom unit is below 3,300 or whatever the number is for that would not be captured in the affordable units. It would not be exempt from property tax. And the same holds true for the city definition. So if you go on the other side of the scale, and if you're to look at the maximum income earner per the city's definition, a single person can afford to pay, earning the very top, can afford to pay $2,305 for a studio. That's not going to be eligible for the tax benefit neither. It won't be counted as an affordable unit. So it works on both sides.
Yep.
And because we're shifting to this income-based process and we are operationalizing it, we also need to compare it to what the market provides. Because as things get more affordable, let's say, and the market can build at that rate, great. It doesn't need to get the subsidies to be affordable. Those people can afford homes that the market produces. On the other hand, if things get more expensive and rents go up, we know that often moderate income earners are vulnerable to those price escalations. And this ensures that if it's needed, those moderate income earners are able to access affordable homes through this partnership.
Okay. I will probably continue to chat with you about this before this finally comes to council. I think this accepting the either or of the definitions, like it is, it's an unholy mixture of definitions that we are proposing to waive, when what we should be insisting on is however you count affordability, we will only give property tax exemptions to the definition that results in the lowest rent. But I will leave it there.
Yeah, we're at time. Of course, you can get back on.
I'm going to hop back on for
Yeah.
other questions.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you, Debbie.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Well, there's lots to talk about. And what an interesting segue, since we had the symposium this morning on health and housing. And we did have a representative from Build Canada Homes there, who's the director of partnerships for Ontario. So that was a great start. Felt like a precursor to what we're doing now. So that's great. One of the biggest aspects that we were pointing out in the housing and health symposium is about supportive housing, and this is something that was pointed out in the Auditor General's report about the need for it, and the need to work with other levels of government. This is working with the federal government, and it's a great start. But what about the province, and what conversations are we having to bring them in, particularly since a lot of it is related to social services?
Through the chair, so I'm going to ask Hale Brown to respond to that question, as he has those types of conversations with the province regarding to operating costs.
Thank you, Chair. So we have ongoing conversations on a yearly basis in terms of what we need for supportive housing operating. On the capital side, it is all contained in our long-range financial plan for housing in terms of what our goals are, and that will be updated next term of council. From the operating side of things, following that health and housing symposium, we will be standing up a table with hospital partners and other healthcare partners, so we take an integrated approach on that. So beyond just the conversations that I have from the social services component with Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, they will also be engaging the Ministry of Health directly as health funded partners. So that's the two ways we're tackling it. And really over the next 6 months, our goal is to have an integrated advocacy plan to the province so that we're giving the same messages to both ministries.
Thank you. Appreciate that work, because that's an important part of the table, and that's an important part of the conversation, that we need all levels of government to work on this. No, I appreciate it. Some of the points that were raised by delegations about long-term maintenance costs, because that's a big part of housing. Ottawa Community Housing has to deal with that, especially with such long agreements. Projects that are 50 years old, things fall apart. But also the environmental standards. That is something that Ottawa Community Housing is doing to have zero emissions. But what is being asked of nonprofits in terms of making these durable and environmentally sound projects?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question of clarification. Are you referring to the affordable housing pipeline projects or the Build Canada Home projects?
Yeah, it should be in general, but frankly, we should be asking it of all developments, but particularly this. Thank you.
So the Build Canada Homes projects are led by the federal government. They are the ones who are responsible for constructing the homes, for building the partnerships, for financing them, for ensuring the affordability over a 99-year period. I can provide a general comment with regards to operating costs, a mixed income model where you're targeting about 40% of affordable units versus units that are kind of near market or market, allows for enough rents to be collected to ensure that the developments or the nonprofits are putting aside enough funding for their capital reserves, which pays for the maintenance, the repairs, and over time for the modernization that becomes required as these properties age. So that's the value of a mixed income model as is proposed here, and as Ottawa Community Housing has been moving to as well. With regards to environmental standards, we do find that many not-for-profit housing providers choose to adopt them because they are responsible for the operations, and they do find that they are able to recoup the costs and to have operating efficiencies, but that is really at the discretion of the not-for-profit providers. The provincial regulations that have come forward really limits the municipality's ability to regulate that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think it's very important that we have those high environmental standards, and if the feds are in charge of that, that's good. In terms of the transparency and accountability and the partnership, how will that be communicated to both council and to the general public?
Thank you for the question through the chair. So there will be an implementation table that is established to ensure that the intent of this agreement is respected. So to ensure that the homes are rented at that level, to have conversations ongoing about the development review process, what is being built. So city staff will be part of those discussions on an ongoing basis. That is part of this agreement. We can provide updates, and we had committed in the report to provide updates by written memo to council.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And in terms of the motion that was put forward, in terms of public consultation, I think that's very important because there's no information at this point to the public about these projects. And will there be an ability, for example, to have community meetings to give information to local communities about these projects?
So the overall intent is to continue to have that public engagement, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Marcia, to provide additional detail.
Thank you. Through the chair, as it relates to the projects on federal lands, that stream of this agreement, the intention is to remove the need for an application, but not remove the lens that we would look at a project of this scale and size typically. So we would still bring the same expertise and professional advice. We would still engage the community the way we would through our normal planning processes. It will look different because it'll be truncated, it'll be shorter, it'll be more condensed because the objective here is to get something moving quickly. But I see this as an opportunity, and with the clarifying motion that Councillor Johnson has put on the table, I think that would be spelled out in greater detail. But basically, yes, the idea is there would still be engagement and consultation because that's a really important part, particularly when we get at the detailed site level. We often get a lot of really useful feedback from local residents about how a project's moving forward. So that wouldn't change. It will just move faster and maybe be less opportunities than you might see on a project that takes several months to maybe more than 1 year.
Yeah, it would have to happen quickly if it has to be shovel ready within 12 months is what it says. Thank you. Are all these projects on public land?
through you, Mr. Mayor, the projects, the 2,000 units that are being developed by Build Canada Homes are on federal lands. The not-for-profit housing projects that are in the municipal pipeline, so the 1,000 units that are receiving 150 million from Build Canada Homes, are not on federal lands. Some of them have received municipal lands, and some of them have received lands through other means. They've had them within their portfolio.
Okay, but they're all going to be handled the same way?
Through the mayor, no, they won't be handled the same way. So the 2,000 homes on federal lands, that includes a mix of affordable homes, are homes that are being built by the federal public builder, Build Canada Homes. The municipal contribution to those is simply in the form of waivers of charges and fees. The municipality has a role to play in the implementation table to ensure that what we've asked for is reflected as those units are developed. The 1,000 units that are in the affordable housing pipeline, that's the same that the affordable housing team brings forward on a regular basis. It's to support the new development of not-for-profit housing. Unfortunately, we had a number of projects that we simply didn't have enough funding to move forward and to ensure that they were able to get to the building stage. So they're ready to go, but they had a capital gap. And so we negotiated with Build Canada Homes as part of this deal to help us close that funding gap so that those homes could get built quicker as well. So they will follow the typical process that you're accustomed to.
Okay, and we'll hear about that soon so that we can have that information.
Correct. We'll be sharing the list of the final negotiated list should council ultimately provide the delegated authority to conclude those negotiations from that short list. We'll share that final list with council via memo.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate this.
I think Marcia wanted to add something to that.
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Through the Chair to the Councillor. I just wanted to clarify from a process perspective, the properties that my colleague's talking about that are our existing pipeline projects, they are already through the planning process. They, in many cases, might even have a building permit. They just don't have enough funds to get over the hurdle to get to construction, which is different than the federal land sites where they would need to go through some kind of planning process. Under this model, while they wouldn't be applicants, they would be more partners sitting at a table. If the eventual outcome for that site, for example, needed an official plan amendment or a zoning bylaw, that package would come to the planning committee as a municipally initiated package so that it would still be in compliance with our official plan or zoning bylaw. But we're not presuming the outcome. That would be done collaboratively as they work through as we work through in that implementation, what that project will actually be and how to achieve the outcome as outlined in the agreement.
Thank you very much. I mean, overall, this is a welcome news, and we have to move forward on building more affordable houses, even if it's difficult to define affordable. Ottawa Community Housing, of course, is our strong partner, since we are the only shareholder of Ottawa Community Housing and will continue to be. Much of what you're doing in terms of the affordable definition was already defined with the AREEV program, which is exactly that kind of model where it's market rate, but a different kind of market rate, and it is very welcome overall. So it's good to have more of it across the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Gower.
Thanks, Mayor. On this whole thing about the tax exemptions based on a different definition, the way I'm thinking of it is we hear all the time at committee from councillors and from the public that we need more 3-bedroom and 4-bedroom rentals across the city. It's really hard for developers to make that pencil out, to make that make sense financially. And the change of definition makes a bit of difference for the studios 1s and 2s, makes a bigger difference on the 3s and 4s. I think it's a way we're going to get these larger units built. And it is a change, and there is a change in tax revenue, but I think it's a good trade-off. like the vacancy rate now for studios, 1 bedrooms, and 2 bedrooms hovers around 3%. The vacancy rent for 3-bedroom units in Ottawa right now is 1.7%. Like, we need more of these units. Here's a way that we can, I think of it as we're subsidizing more 3 and 4-bedroom units. This is what we hear all the time requests for. So I think that's a good thing. But I had a few questions. One on the provincial angle. I know it's not a big part of the financial pro forma, but the education taxes, I want to make sure I'm understanding this. We're assuming the education taxes will be exempt as part of the overall financial model, but we're not 100% sure if the province will actually exempt them. Can you just clarify that point?
So I'll begin and then turn over to my colleagues in finance. Yeah, so the province has, through recent bills, kind of indicated, or the budget indicated, that they would directly collect those education fees. And so within the agreement with Build Canada Homes, we just have acknowledged that there's a possibility that the province doesn't exempt it. And if that's the case, then we're not accountable for covering that component of the property tax. And I'm not sure if Isabel or Cyril have anything else to add on that.
Yeah, I think my understanding is they have to do a separate application for the education portion, but with the MCFA, they are able to do so.
Okay, so that's good. And the risk is not on the city in any case. Okay. I was also thinking about the DC waiver. The province seems to be signaling, or they want cities to reduce DCs in order to receive some kind of a replacement infrastructure funding. Are we going to be able to leverage the DC discounts that we're offering here against what the province is potentially offering?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the announcement from the province is relatively new, so we are having conversations to really understand that, but it is certainly something that is under consideration, and regardless, it aligns with the intent and would contribute to the overall intent that is has been put forward by the province.
Okay. Well, good, and I hope that keep us updated on that, and hopefully we're successful in leveraging that discount, because it would improve the deal on our end, I think. The CIP for affordable housing that we introduced a couple years ago, my reading of the package is that there wouldn't be anything that would qualify anyways, because the tax increment grant depends on taxes going up, and we are waiving taxes. So I just want to confirm, like, there's no way that CIPs could be stacked on top of what is being offered here by the developers?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. I have a bit of time. I think this is a good deal. There's a bit of risk. Obviously, we use development charges to fund infrastructure. We'll have a reduction in that. And we use taxes to fund ongoing services, but I think that's offset by the positives in this deal. There's the tax growth from the new units that are being built. There is the significant contribution by the federal government towards supportive housing, long-term affordability of 99 years. That's very important. Accelerating the pipeline. There's units that are ready to be built now, but aren't being built because there's not money there to do it. This will move those up. And then the benefit to the local construction industry and kickstarting the factory-built housing sector in our region. So I think there's a lot of positives here, and thank you, staff, for your work in negotiating this agreement. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, just to understand, the properties that are in question, they are owned by the federal government. Is that correct for the Build Canada Homes portion, not the other list?
Correct. They are federal lands that will remain in federal ownership.
And so when you say they remain in federal ownership, as these properties are being developed, they will be on a lease and not otherwise split apart?
That's correct.
And so the 99-year term is the term of the lease?
So I'm not able to comment on that because that's really with Build Canada Homes. What I can say is that the affordability that the federal government has committed to is a 99-year affordability period.
Okay, very good. I think the fact that the land remains in public ownership and is on a lease basis should offer some comfort in terms of the felt uncertainty about that affordability principle over time. And so what is so, you know, we have many properties that are federally owned in the National Capital Region. And of course, in working with other corporations like the NCC, they do drive the terms with which they choose to develop. So what were some of the terms that BCH was coming into this negotiation with? Was part of their expectation that there would be a mixed income dimension to the development?
Through the chair, that is correct. Their model is a mixed income model, and they were really, I guess that was the key principle that they were looking to move forward with. And so the discussions around the development charge exemptions applying to all units, for example, was really to enable that true mixed income model to exist and to support the construction of those deeply affordable units. The rents that are collected on those deeply affordable units would not be sufficient to cover the cost to build the homes. And so we're contributing that through the DC waivers on all units.
So if we were to suggest, you know, we would like to have, from the city's perspective, all of the proponents on the Build Canada Homes lands be nonprofit developers, that was not an option for this deal at the onset.
That is not an option for this deal. As I understand it, the Build Canada Homes model is a model that leverages the private sector efficiency to build and the nonprofit expertise and know-how to run the homes and the projects.
Very good. So we are seeking and we are seeing some affordability and some deep affordability within the constraints of the deal as presented, which I think is how we often have to come up with working in collaboration with other levels of government. So I'm very glad to see that. I think for me, what I'm interested in focusing on are the policy exemptions that the city is putting forward, because I'm not sure that I am as familiar with those implications. So can you sort of speak to the exemption for the providers that is being put forward as one of the recommendations? What does that mean?
Thank you, Chair. So we're not expecting to have to exercise that exemption. Currently, the bylaw that enables the property tax waiver that Council has endorsed is restricted to not-for-profit providers. The intent is that the units, in particular the affordable units, are operated by not-for-profit providers. However, Build Canada Homes has asked for the flexibility in the event that some of the units are operated by the private sector. So we're requesting that if it's required, but the overall intent, as I mentioned previously, is that the affordable units are operated by not-for-profits.
Okay. I guess I remain interested in the exemption in the sense that I have had other builders be interested in providing relatively affordable units that fall outside some of the requirements in that provision, including taking people off the list. So my examples remain, that I have a mosque that has built some townhomes and is looking to build seniors homes. I have a mosque on Baseline who is also seeking to build affordable homes. I have, the Muslim Association of Canada. All of these institutions, have different guidance around borrowing. And so those types of levers, when it comes to property tax relief and otherwise, could be very helpful in them advancing some of their capital, some of their equity that they need to start new projects that would offset, the supply issue that we're talking about broadly. So in this case, we provide an exemption. In that case, we don't. Can you help me to understand whether there's further opportunity to look at exemptions for other types of players in this space?
Through the mayor. The exemption that's being requested here really is to enable the partnership with the federal government, which is quite different than a partnership with the private sector. So how the federal government chooses to deliver its project, which it is accountable for, may vary. But the partnership is about a partnership with the federal government, which is why we're comfortable requesting this type of exception. With regards to your question about other opportunities, the Housing Acceleration Plan did include an item to review the Municipal Capital Housing Facility bylaw. It was feedback that had been received through consultations both by the not-for-profit sector and the private sector to enable more affordable homes. There will be a separate report coming forward to respond to that Housing Acceleration Plan item for Council's consideration.
Okay, very good. So just as a final question, Chair, we're seeing these parcels of land being spoke of in this deal, and I do think that the deal offers a tremendous amount of benefit when it comes to the spectrum of affordability, which I think is extremely important, especially with unit size. So I wonder, maybe Ms. Stewart, you could comment further on, given that, it does appear to have limited ability to drive deep affordability on these sites in the way that we might want to see across the city, do these opportunities open up other places for you to look at deeper affordability on city-owned land where we have greater control? Because I do imagine you're looking at, a portfolio of land opportunity. And although we're focused today on this, and obviously it has constraints, I'd like to know that we're working, to look across a portfolio with every decision and try and eke out other opportunities for what's missing here elsewhere.
Thank you for the question. I think it's an important one. With regards to the depth of affordability, like our assessment and my professional assessment of it is that this is the best opportunity we have to achieve that level of affordability in today's climate. The cost to build housing has escalated rapidly over a short period of time. We have economic uncertainty. We have interest rates that are higher than in previous times. So the cost to build homes are very high. And then the level of rents that households who are earning very low and low income can afford to pay doesn't come at all close to covering the cost to build. This is why you see market rents climbing or had been climbing. It's to recognize the fact that the cost to build the homes has been escalating considerably. And so this type of partnership and this type of mixed income model is a way to enable those deeply affordable homes. When we look at the projects that are being advanced through the nonprofit affordable housing strategy for new development, for example, those new homes cannot sustain or afford the deep rents either. And we don't have a lot of projects that offer the deep rents. Some of the larger projects that are on our affordable housing pipeline, so you'll see some that have like 270 some units, those projects do offer deep rents for a small portion of their units because they're larger developments and they are also cross-subsidizing within that project.
That's very good. And I know I said that was the last question, but just with respect to costs ever climbing, is the commitment from Build Canada Homes to build the homes, or is there a ceiling to the dollars so that if they are suddenly seeing exploding costs, we're going to see a reduction in units provided?
The Build Canada Homes commitment is to the number of units.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Troster.
Thank you very much. So just to be really clear, specifically for the affordable units on federal-owned land, who will own them once they're built? The developer, the feds, or the nonprofit that's operating them?
I hesitate to speak on behalf of Build Canada Homes. It's really their model. What I understand, so these are federal lands that they are not selling. They're going to continue to own them. My understanding is that they will be long-term leases for those lands at rates that enable the developments that they've committed 2. So I don't know what that is, but it's they're responsible for being able to deliver on this.
So they own the land, but we don't know who's going to own the building and who's going to own each of those apartments. The reason I asked is there was a very successful land lease agreement on Walnut Court that was done in the 70s. It was actually the first phase of LeBreton Flats, and those homes have actually remained moderately affordable, maybe because of the land lease agreement, and lots of young families are living there. And it's a rare example of a townhouse community in downtown Ottawa. So I think this is a very cool model and has a lot of potential. But my concern is if it's the private developer that built them, even though it's a land lease that owns the units in perpetuity because they built them, to me, that is a very different scenario than the federal government or the operating nonprofit owning those affordable units. Because for the units that are in our pipeline, those are owned by the nonprofit developer forever and affordable in perpetuity.
Right. So I can't comment on the ownership of the units. That's going to be based on the Bill Canada Homes model. And what I understand is that they have a different option. So they could be owned by the private sector and operated by the nonprofits. They could be wholly owned by the nonprofits, including the market units. What I understand is that's the most likely scenario. What I can tell you, which I think should provide reassurance, is that they're on long-term leases. At the end of that lease, what happens is that those homes revert to the ownership of the landowner. They are the federal government's. If at that time the federal government chooses to sell to the nonprofit, we're happy with that. On the other hand, if they choose to sell to the private sector, we are recouping with interest our contribution for the development charges and the waivers that we provided, not the property taxes, because that supported the affordability during that period of time that the home was released at those rates. But the other contributions, we are recouping those with interest.
Okay, that's interesting. I think that will be really interesting to watch because another project that has an interesting public-private model is the Dream Multi-Faith Housing Odanak project that's going on LeBreton Flats in my ward. And in that case, the nonprofit multi-faith housing that's running the deeply affordable units, they actually have air rights. So they actually will own the floors in the building. So it's just a little different. And I think we're seeing all these different examples and it'll just be really interesting to watch over time how they work. So here's my question. For the market rent units on the federal lands, will they be subject to provincial rent control guidelines? I know this one's complicated because it's interjurisdictional, but I asked the very same question about the affordable housing CIP and we put a motion forward that passed requiring any private unit that accepts CIP money to voluntarily stick to the provincial rent control guidelines while they're receiving that subsidy. My concern, of course, is that for the units that are not the subsidized, deeply affordable ones within those federal lands, anything built after 2018 in Ontario is not subject to provincial rent control. So do you foresee a scenario where the private owner of those market rent units on the site have above guideline increases because they're technically allowed to do so?
Through the chair. So I think that's a good question, Councillor. Because this is Bill Canada Homes, that's their responsibility. I don't know the answer to that question. I will pose it to Bill Canada Homes and then provide a response. But and actually, we have some representatives from Bill Canada Homes on the call. If you like, we can ask them that question.
Yeah, I would love to hear from them because I'm just I'm very curious because I think some sort of commitment to at least stick to no above guideline increases during the period of time that we are waiving development charges makes a lot of sense. But I also don't know what our power is to impose that over properties on federal lands.
And so Valessa is there? And I'll turn it over to Valessa to respond from Bill Canada Homes.
Thank you, Debbie, and good afternoon, Mayor, councillors, and city staff. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Councillor, with respect to your question, so these are early days. We haven't even got out to market to select a developer for these sites. There are many things that we need to figure out, but as a public organization, ensuring that the rents are I would say, affordable rent increases are reasonable over a long period of time is something that we would absolutely be looking to take into account. Whether that's capped at the provincial guideline increases or not, that is to be determined. But rest assured, we would be looking to have some safeguards in place to make sure that rent increases are not unreasonable in the long term.
Okay, thank you so much for answering. And is that something that will be written into the agreement with whichever developer is chosen for each of these sites?
Yes, it will.
Okay, and for the market rate units, not just for the deeply affordable ones?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll just say this is a model that was really innovated in Ottawa by CCOC Housing. The mixed, and now Arrive is doing it with Ottawa Community Housing, and we see the success of mixed communities. Generally, those properties in my ward are much more harmonious, much less obvious from the outside that they even are affordable housing. Last night, I dropped one of my daughter's friends off at one of the OCH townhouses on Rochester, and they're beautiful. And a lovely moderate income family is able to live there. So I think this is a great model. I share some of Councillor Leeper's concerns. I understand the idea of offering the development charge relief to the whole project to kind of help make the math work with the deeply affordable piece. But I do have discomfort with offering that relief to the market rate units. But assuming that it's written into the agreement with the developer that there is a cap on rent increases, what we've seen with OCH and with CCOC is what they call market rent is still obviously significantly below market because it's a nonprofit developer that's providing that housing. My concern, of course, is this will be a private corporation providing that housing, and I'm feeling a little leery about the controls on the units that are supposed to be market rent that are receiving fee relief from the city. I don't know if you have any feedback on that.
So I'll start, and I see that Valessa Faria from Bill Canada Homes is also available to add additional input into that. While the private sector may play a role in this, ultimately, these are Bill Canada homes. So they're BCH homes, and they will have the oversight of the federal government. As well, there is an implementation table that the city will sit on and have a role in terms of ensuring that the things that the municipality is contributing are going towards what was intended. So, for example, ensuring that the rents are at the affordable levels, that it's the right families and individuals that are benefiting based on their income, et cetera. Valessa, I'm not sure if there's more that you wanted to add to that, but we welcome it.
Through the chair, Councillor, I think you rest assured that these long-term agreements will have annual monitoring mechanisms. That's typical for all sort of land leases and agreements that are entered into with developers. As an example, I worked at the City of Toronto before moving over here to Bill Canada Homes, and we did many long-term land leases where we offered city sites to develop a range of homes. And those agreements do have that annual reporting package. We or the organization typically ensures that the rents are kept at the prescribed levels, that the number of units that are affordable are being maintained, and that sort of thing. So again, rest assured that ultimately the federal government will ensure that there is the ongoing monitoring, oversight, and that the commitments that are made are being adhered to.
Thank you. And I know I just have a few more seconds, but can you speak to the ownership question that I asked before, or is that just not decided yet?
It has not been decided yet, Councillor. It's too early to decide right now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington.
Good afternoon, Mayor and colleagues. Mayor, I just want to start off by thanking you in all sincerity for your commitment to delivering on this project, all the work that you've invested over many months. I think you said this started about a year ago or a year after, slightly thereafter the last federal election, but this is a big deal. And the City of Ottawa cannot build the necessary homes required without provincial and federal partnerships like the one that we have before us today. So thank you very much for getting us to where we are today. I'm concerned, overall, I'm very supportive of what we have before us today, but I have a few concerns I'm just going to raise. One is about the fast tracking of the planning process. And I want to have a better understanding of community engagement and community consultation for the properties that will have the developments on them. Could staff just articulate for me what a public consultation, public engagement process, particularly on the parcels of land that have been identified and will be developed? How do we envision the community will be engaged so that they're aware of what's being proposed, they have opportunities to comment, all respecting the timelines that we would like to see this go through?
Sure, I'll take that question through the chair. So as the report outlines, there are 2 sites that have been identified by the federal government as part of this arrangement that would be the source of where those 2,000 units would go. The way we see this working out, and as I mentioned before, the motion put forward by Councillor Johnson would have me articulate this in greater detail, and until this gets through council, it's still a work in process. But the idea was that we would start with the information we already have. A lot of federal land has been known as a candidate for housing for a long time. So what work has already happened, what consultation or engagement with the community or associations or interested parties has already taken place, and start from there. What information do we have across all of our departments? So rather than treating the federal government and BCH as a complete private sector outside part applying for things and requiring them to do the standard list of studies and plans that we would then review in our standard way. We would say, where are we? How much do we know? And then so I see us engaging with the parties that have already been engaged on a particular site or have interest. I see us having conversations with the local councillor or nearby councillors that might have interests in the sites and have information that would help us. And then there would be some kind of a very public information meeting, a place for people to see the actual designs, understand what's going on. I see us using our Engage page the way we do now for normal planning applications. As I said, if this requires a rezoning, it would come back to Planning Committee so that it can meet the statutory obligations of the Planning Act and have a formal meeting there. So I see us leveraging a lot of the tools we would use today, but recognizing that these sites have a story and a history that may involve different groups. We would take them site by site and start the engagement based on what is known to date, and then really move together as a partnership to ensure that before this is final, there has been public awareness and a public opportunity for input.
Yeah, that's excellent to hear. Even the best of the best news, sometimes we think there wouldn't be any pushback or any additional input from the public, but especially when you have subdivisions as large as what's being contemplated, can't skip community engagement and involvement. So thank you. That's a good answer. Coming out of the comprehensive zoning bylaw review, we had a motion that talked about partnership between the city and the NCC developing or identifying NCC owned site or lands for residential development. That is not part of today's report. Could staff talk about where that is and when we might expect to see NCC lands?
Through the chair to Councillor, yes, there was a motion that you passed at committee and that it did go to get approved by council that had us to look at a similar lens in terms of an agreement that could work for NCC lands, given that they have an expressed interest to build housing as well. It's different and it's not part of the Build Canada arrangement, but we did endeavor to we committed to looking into that. I will say at a staff level with the NCC in the city, there's been some productive and useful conversations. We are very far apart in terms of the way the NCC imagines a partnership working and what you see before you here from a Build Canada housing and the city perspective. So at this point, we don't have an agreement to bring forward to this committee or any other. We have asked the NCC to put in writing what they would like to see in terms of a way of working in a partnership, and then that can give us something concrete to respond to and bring back to committee for conversation. So at this point, there is no agreement, and there's cordial conversation, but we're not at anywhere close to an agreement.
Okay, thank you for that as well. And again, I don't want to deviate too much from the report that's before us, but it was expected today, and there's a lot of, as you know, Madame Wallace, there's a lot of engagement and interest in the community on that. So stay tuned on that. So thanks very much. Just back to now the plan, $400 million over 3,000 homes. I think I heard Ms. Stewart say the amount of money is not fixed. It's the commitment from the federal government to build 3,000 homes is the fixed number. So if over time costs escalate and it's more expensive to build, this does not jeopardize the construction of 3,000 homes. Is that correct?
Through the mayor. So I'll provide a little bit of clarification on that. So there's 2,000 homes on federal lands. Build Canada Homes, their commitment is to the development of 2,000 units and the affordability commitments. They're responsible for ensuring that those homes are built and operated and the affordability is maintained. The 1,000 units on city, from the municipal not-for-profit pipeline are very different. That is our typical affordable housing development, how the city advances that. We had a funding gap, and so Build Canada Homes is, as part of this deal, is contributing to close that gap so that those homes will be developed. So there's two separate parts of this agreement.
So the first part, the 2,000 homes, there's no upfront financial commitment from the city. Our commitment is the waiver of DCs, other fees, and future property taxes.
That's correct.
Okay, excellent. My last question is just if, and again, I don't know if this question is best for city staff or our federal colleague who's online, and that is, given that building affordable housing is the top priority, is there any way when we engage developers for the site that we can talk about capping costs as best as possible, ensuring that their costs are met, but there be a discussion about how much profit can be realized from the construction of affordable housing and supportive housing? I believe private companies have the right to make profit, but in this context of needing to build as much affordable housing as possible, do those discussions ever happen?
Through the chair, I'll begin and then turn it over to Valessa. So the model here is an overall model to ensure that the full that the full development, so with all the rent structures are realized. And then with regards to the specific question, I'm going to turn over to Valessa.
Thank you, Debbie, and through the chair. Councillor, we have not built any sites yet, and these are early. We are just looking at market capacity right now. In fact, An RFP will be out for the Huron site over the next few weeks, and we'll see how the market responds. Ultimately, we need to make sure that the units are built, and that's why we're focused on a range of affordability. It's very costly to build. As you know, land values have dropped because of market conditions. Rents have also dropped in the short term, although we know that if we don't increase supply right now, then there'll be a supply gap in the future years. So all that to say, we need to make sure that the economics of each project will deliver the homes that we need for Canadians. So with RFPs, we'll be able to get a better sense of how the market is responding, what sort of levers we need across governments to have these projects be not only delivered and provide that range of affordability, but to Debbie's earlier point, to be maintained in good condition long term. These are 99-year agreements. That's a long time. These buildings will need to be not only maintained, but there will be replacements required, in after 10, 20, 30 years. So all that to say, we will be looking to make sure that that the federal government receives great value for money. That's always top of mind. But we also achieve the range of affordability, but also some of these are large sites, right? So it's not only the housing, but we're also looking to make sure that all the other aspects that create great complete communities are delivered as part of these projects.
I appreciate your answer to that question. Thanks very much. And thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Councillor Menard.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and similarly echo thanks to the staff who've been negotiating and going back and forth on this, and your office as well, who's worked on this. I'm supportive of the plan overall. I have questions though about how it'll function and the future for other deals that'll be structured. Is the deal signed off now and done, or it's coming to be signed off soon?
Through the mayor. So no, the deal is not signed off. The terms have been agreed to, conditional on council's endorsement.
Okay. Obviously, you've gone back and forth, and when you say council's endorsement, is there room for stretch goals in your opinion on certain things, or have you negotiated up until this point, and this is the best we can get?
So we've negotiated over quite a number of months, and it has gone back and forth. We've really pushed hard to get the best possible deal for the city. We think that we've achieved something that provides overall a really good value for the city in terms of the number of units that are provided, as well as the affordability of those units. So we think that we have before council a good deal. Our last discussions were very difficult. We pushed hard and we were able to achieve additional benefits. So that would lead me to believe that we're at the end of the negotiation ability here.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm going to raise some concerns now, just for the future. That might be with the federal government or our discussions, but I am going to raise a few concerns. So the wait list piece is concerning to me. The units, the hope is that we consolidated the city's centralized wait lists and our below market rent wait lists. This is where we're trying to get everybody into, so that there's a consistent process with which we house folks and help with supplements. The concern here is that we've got a potential waiver of that on certain criteria. But so I guess how many will come from those, again, worked on centralized wait lists, below market rent wait lists, that the city has been so stringent on, and how many might come off those wait lists, based on, I guess, the federal criteria or the developer criteria that people would be living in those units. Do you have those numbers?
Through the chair. So the majority of the affordable homes are going to pull from the wait list. So you'll see most of those contributing to reductions in the wait list. The requested exemption is because we are looking at a broader definition of affordability, both the new city definition. So that new city definition that was approved by council this week requires operationalization And this partnership requires operationalization. So it's possible that there are some households who would benefit from this agreement and from the affordable units who are not currently on the list because of that expanded definition. And so we're just looking for that exemption if it's required. But the intent is the affordable homes are not for profit operated. They will be drawing from the centralized wait list. It would be, I would anticipate that it'd be very small in terms of whether that exemption would have to be enacted.
Only for the affordable units, or enacted for the other, because there's 200 that are supposed to be deeply affordable, 300 to 400 that would meet our definition, and then I'm just trying to get the exact numbers. Another, I think it's up to 600 that may go outside of our definition. It's those ones that go outside of our definition that they will certainly come from off the wait list, or they could still come from the wait list.
So the Bill Canada Homes units, most of them will meet our definitions and they'll draw from that. Because the city has put in place a new definition that is above like average market rent in many cases, and because Bill Canada Homes is also an income-based definition, there are times that the wait list may not include the the range of incomes that need to be captured on that. And so the other piece is that the federal government is not obligated to be drawing from our waitlist, although they have committed to draw from our waitlist, and they're prioritizing not-for-profit operations, so it will draw from our waitlist. The exemptions just to enable the overall model.
I understand. I guess I wish that the negotiation could have included that there was not an exemption, that they would come from our centralized wait list that the city has worked very hard on. And if that would take extra supplements to get them there, that it would have been, I think, desirable in that case. And I would encourage a stretch goal of going back to them in that way. But I understand where we're at. The BCH is going to act as developer. They are a developer, but they're going to be contracting private builders. This is different than the ownership question. They're going to be contracting private builders to build all of the units. I guess there's a question for BCH.
Through the chair, so Valessa can answer that, but I believe that she had previously indicated that all of those details are not yet worked out, but overall the model is leverage the private sector efficiency to build and the not-for-profit sector's know-how in terms of operating homes for very low to moderate income households. And Valessa, I invite you to elaborate.
Thank you, Debbie. And through the chair, Councillor, yes, more than likely the private sector will be building these units. Again, we need to move fast. We need to take advantage of economies of scale. We are looking as part of Bill Canada Homes to also increase capacity in modern methods of construction and help support to scale up industry at this time. So that all of that is taken into account. Again, it's early days. Once we put that RFP out, we will look at responses. And so some of those details are still to be figured out, but I would say that it is highly likely that there will be a private developer building these buildings.
Would that include both the market units and the affordable units?
That has not been determined, but potentially.
Okay. The council has directed staff to look at options for a public builder. And I'm wondering where we are with that model. At this time, obviously that was fairly recently, and there's a lot more work to come. We talk about building efficiencies and that sort of thing. Well, that's what we should be building up in the public sector. It's not just the building efficiencies; it's the profit motive, right? So, where are we with the public builder portion, which could really help us with these types of deals in the future?
Mayor, investigating the public builder model was an action under the Housing Acceleration Plan. So we'll be bringing forward an update on the acceleration plan in general and that item in particular on May 5th, I believe is committee date.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful in terms of the date. The difference between this and say Confederation Heights, which is obviously going to have a lot of new units built on it, federal lands will come to us for things like site plan and bylaw work that's left to come. Can you just give me the difference between, obviously this is specific for these parcels of land that we've got at 1495 Heron and Wateridge. The Confederation Heights process, how does it differ in terms of what we're talking about here? And could some of this type of thing in terms of the affordability metrics be applied to that process as well?
So maybe I'll start, and my colleague might want to add to the last part of your question. But in terms of process, so if right now we're looking for the next 12 months, should this pass, we'd be focused on these two sites. But it opens the door for other sites to be included, which could include phases of projects. Wateridge is on phase 7. It could be a phase of Tunney's Pasture. It could be a phase of Confederation Heights. So there's kind of more that could happen because it's a lot of lands that there's portfolio. In the absence of that, they would continue through the planning process. But in both cases, we would still have a site plan. We would still get a building permit. We're still assuming that there would be a rezoning if that is required. Any kind of road cut permits, all that kind of stuff would still happen. The difference is that we're not requiring the application up front with the heavy load of studies. It would be more that as a collective of parties, we come together and maybe there's more that needs to be known about a particular intersection. So rather than doing a whole transportation impact assessment because we already know a lot about the area, we have agreed upon concern about a particular intersection. So the federal government goes away with their partner and maybe does a little more work on that intersection to help satisfy, so we can figure out how traffic will be managed. But it is doing it as needed as opposed to a flat list of requirements. So we still see a site plan. We still see we don't need the same, securities and whatnot that we normally have because we have this whole agreement that would talk about how we're going to operate together long term to hold feet to the fire on, things like post-construction elements that we maybe have to be a little more specific about with if it was a private sector developer alone. So yeah, I think when we get to construction and the final stages, it will look a lot like others. It just might not have the same belts and suspenders that we would have on a site-specific project because we'll have the benefit of this agreement and the implementation table to deal with any issues that come up.
Okay, that's helpful on the site differentials. Are there any sustainability metrics in this? You heard of delegation. The upfront cost is one thing. The ongoing operations that are a concern for affordability as well.
Through the chair. So with regards to ongoing operations, this really comes down to the fact that this is a model that looks at the entire site and the rents that are being achieved across all of the portfolio and the ability to set aside funding to support ongoing operations. So meaning that there's cross subsidization across the project, but ultimately that's a responsibility of the federal government and it's not the responsibility of the municipality to ensure the viability and ongoing operations. There's a commitment from the federal government to ensure the homes are produced and to ensure that the affordability that is negotiated here is achieved over a 99-year period.
I appreciate that. I guess I mean more the building envelope and sustainability of the buildings.
That's a responsibility of Build Canada Homes. These are their projects.
I'll ask them.
To the Chair, Councillor, so most of these projects, in addition to Build Canada, funding and financing, these projects will also likely have CMHC financing attached to them. And the federal government has very specific requirements for sustainability, which in fact may be higher than your local standards based on my experience working in other municipalities. So absolutely, those efficiency standards will be built in and incorporated into the development of these buildings.
Okay, Mayor, I'm on my last question. Would rather not come back on, but I appreciate that, and I would love to work with you as the chair of the Environment and Climate Change Committee on that particular piece. My last question is just around the not-for-profit affordable housing units. Obviously, 400 million we're putting into this. It's over time. It's differently structured. I know all that. But how many public not-for-profit, let's say, housing units could be built for $400 million? I know we're getting 200 out of this, of the really deeply affordable, but how much could you build for 400 million?
So through the chair, the question is very difficult to answer because we're not talking capital dollars, right? Most of this is foregone revenues. But if you wanted to do the math, it's 400 million, and we estimate that the average cost to build a unit is 600,000 in Ottawa today.
Okay. So somewhere around like 600 units-ish. I'm just doing probably quick bad math, but around 600 maybe. Okay. I know that's very crude comparatively to what the process is set up here. The comparison is interesting.
So and Chair, one additional comment is that that includes funding, direct funding from Bill Canada Homes into the city's nonprofit affordable housing pipeline. And there are affordable and deeply affordable units in there as well. So as much as the Bill Canada Homes has this broad range and a guarantee of like targeting 200 deeply affordable homes, there are other homes that are quite very affordable as well. And will not be produced by the market. And then on the other side of the equation, when it comes to the not-for-profit pipeline, there are a lot of affordable homes in that. So we're actually with 400 million accomplishing more than that target that would be achieved with the direct investment.
Certainly see that other side of the affordability quotient for the other units. Thank you very much, Mayor. Thanks for the allow me to go on there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor King.
Thank you so much, Your Worship, and it's really great to see the ultimate formalization of the city's collaboration with Built Canada Homes, positioning both Built Canada Homes and the municipality as partners to really advance federal supports for and municipal supports for affordable housing development on surplus and underutilized federal lands within Ottawa. Being a ward councillor representing a large tract of this land in Wateridge Village, I'm really pleased to see the advent of this partnership. We know that the partnership includes Buy Canadian provisions and a preference for factory-built and modular construction, and I think we heard from a delegation today who is concerned about that trajectory. So I'm just wondering, what is the estimated number of local Ottawa area construction jobs, apprenticeship opportunities, and supply chain benefits that would be expected from this partnership? I know it's early days, but obviously we want to ensure that there is a local economic benefit that will be tracked and reported to council on this. So I just wanted to get some insights on the impacts to our local economy, because obviously the impacts for the housing component is very important and is very exciting, but we obviously want to have a sense of what the employment impacts will be for Ottawa as well.
Through you, Chair. That is also a very good question. So we know that construction industry, so construction-related jobs, have a very high multiplier effect. And so that's why often you will see governments really investing in infrastructure and construction-related projects through economic downturns, because it has that broader effect within the economy. From my time at CMHC, I can't tell you in terms of the number of jobs, but the multiplier effect is 3 times. So it has quite a ripple effect within the economy. In terms of the number of jobs that would be created, that would be analysis that would have to be produced. Valessa, I'm not sure whether that's something that you have looked at in terms of your proposals, but because it's often something that the federal government does look at in terms of job creation and that type of thing as a priority.
Well, thank you, Debbie. And through the chair, I do not have those metrics available today. What I can say is Build Canada Homes is very focused on stimulating the local economies across Canada. And that's why we are very, in every proposal that we ultimately approve, projects must deliver modern methods of construction and commit to using local suppliers and local supply chains. So again, I don't have those metrics for you today, but it's something that we are tracking as an organization. We're just under 7 months old as an organization. So we are establishing our KPIs, and we're going to be in the future reporting very publicly on what the federal government is achieving in this area.
Well, I do appreciate the traction that's being made in this very short timeline. The fact that what is before this joint committee meeting today is, a report to formalize the work. I think that we would benefit from quantified local economic benefit information and data because that would strengthen the public case for the city's contribution and ensure accountability for one of the partnership's stated policy objectives. But obviously, that information will emerge as the project moves forward. Really excited about the potential for this project. Our city definitely needs more affordable housing, and our city definitely needs more jobs and employment opportunities. And I believe that the report before us will set us down that road towards seeing those greater investments made in our communities. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor King. Councillor Carr.
Thank you very much. I want to echo Councillor King and Councillor Brockington's gratitude for this. I think it's fantastic on the part of staff, Build Canada Homes, Prime Minister, the Mayor. Heard a little bit of criticism about, this isn't good enough, it's not going to do anything enough. I think combined with all the actions that this council has taken over this term of council, we've seen acquisitions, Kilbourne, the hotel downtown, Corkstown, St. Joseph. We've seen additional housing allowances, large family enhanced benefits, increased capital contributions. You got us more money, Mr. Mayor, on our Housing Accelerator Fund, the Housing Accelerator Plan, waiver of property taxes on not-for-profit. I think we've had quite a robust number of measures, and so thank you to everyone involved in that. There was a couple questions about the consultation process that Build Canada Homes will be following, and particularly with 1495 Heron Road. I just want to mention that as the ward councillor for that area, there has been a tremendous amount of consultation when that was previous in the Canada Lands Company. Before I was elected, I was one of the community representatives that sat on the Public Advisory Committee. We did a lot of communication consultations with the community. I know that the project is not exactly taking the turn that is expected. It's going to have higher density. It's going to be made out of different materials, slightly different operating model. But I've been meeting with representatives from Canada Lands who eventually will be part of Build Canada Homes. Build Canada Homes themselves has met with my community association directly. The president met with them recently. So I am not worried about the consultation on 1495 Heron Road. There has always been excellent communication between the federal government and the community on that. So just to add that. Also to add, a couple of people have asked about the process. There was a very public request for qualifications that was listed on Merck's a couple of weeks ago, or actually it was last year, 2025, end of 2025, looking for to pre-qualify builders for subsequent RFPs to design and construct at the site. So you can look that up. I know there were some questions on that. Anyhow, just now to get to my question, sorry. I just want to say, ask a question about confirming some of the numbers that were said, because I know for the Heron Road project, they're saying 1,200 units. That is, and they've said 40% affordable. That was in the RFQ. So I'm not that great at math, but I think that's 580 units. I've seen people saying there's only going to be 600 to 800 affordable units being created out of this entire deal. From my calculation, there will be 600 to 800 on the federal properties alone, plus the 1,000 on our own lands are in our pipeline, right? So it's 1,600 to 1,800 affordable units. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thanks. And then the $150 million contribution is just to those in the pipeline, right? Because for on the property, everything that we're giving, what is the approximate value of the total federal government contribution for the two streams?
So through the chair, for the properties or the homes that are being built on the federal lands, the federal government will be providing financing for those homes. That could be loans and contributions, but they're responsible for ensuring that those homes get built. We estimate that those 2,000 homes, based on Altus cost estimates, would cost about $1.2 billion to build. So we don't know exactly what that's going to look like in terms of like loan, mortgage loan insurance, and capital contributions, but they're the ones who are going to be responsible for the financing of that. On the on the municipal pipeline, there's 150 million that is being provided to support completing the capital stack that's required to get those homes built. But it's also important to note that there's significant federal contribution already in that pipeline because of CMHC, Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation financing, which includes loans and capital, and other contributions as well. So it's a significant investment from the federal government to support all those affordable homes.
Yep, thanks very much for clarifying that. I think it's been underestimated in some respects. I do have a question, about 1495 Heron Road specifically, because as we all know, it was one of the 6 sites that was announced as a pilot site for Build Canada Homes to first start building prior to the negotiation of this agreement. So could you outline the advantages of including 1495 Heron Road as part of this deal when it was already announced by Build Canada Homes as one of the 6 sites?
Through the chair. So I would say that building in this environment is very difficult. Costs are really high. There's a big commitment in terms of affordability. You mentioned and noted the 40% affordability. So our contribution to this is really to ensure that those homes get built now when the private sector is not building at the rate that we had seen previously. So this provides a lot of benefits. Those homes are going to be realized today and not down the road. The second thing is that, as Councillor King was mentioning, it creates jobs and stimulates the economy. And so that's another advantage of contributing at this time. And there's a commitment to ensure that all of the homes that are committed under this begin construction within the next 12 months.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So is it fair to say that by including 1495 Heron Road in this agreement, that it locks in greater affordability over a longer period of time? Does it give more certainty? That would be a fair assessment?
Absolutely. It gives more certainty. And the other piece that gives more certainty on is that those homes will actually get built in the near term.
Perfect. Thanks very much. And then I think I'll skip that one. But just overall then, maybe can I get a word from Cyril, whether or not he thinks that this is good value?
Mr. Mayor, yes, this is good value, and as Isabel laid out, there's no budget impact, so that always puts a smile on my face. So it's a good value deal.
Okay, amazing. Always appreciate hearing your point of view. But thank you very much to all the staff that have worked on it. I know it's a tremendous lift with everything else that you have going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kitts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Kavanaugh referenced this in response to a delegation, but some of us were at the Health and Housing Symposium this morning, which brought together partners across the sector. Build Canada Homes was there to talk about this partnership as well. And a lot of us were reflecting there's real momentum on moving the needle on housing and homelessness. And so, thank you for your leadership. Mr. Mayor, I won't repeat everything that my colleague just listed, but I think that this is yet another step in the right direction as part of many moves that this council has been making in partnership with other levels of government. So I've appreciated the clarity this morning on why this is a sweet deal, why this is something that we should be excited about. Initially, that was my question relative to other agreements that we've had in the past with the federal government. What we're contributing here, what is the value. So I think we've had a really good discussion this morning, and the added detail today about what this is really allowing us to achieve has been helpful. I just wanted to ask, what, if any, conversation has taken place with the construction industry And simply, are they ready to mobilize and scale expeditiously?
So I can begin and then toss it over to my colleagues.
Sure.
So I have not been involved in discussions with the construction industry, but we are starting to see a slowdown in the construction overall within the city. And I'm aware that we're starting to get stronger responses to municipal kind of tendering processes. But with that, I'll turn it over to Marcia and Tammy Rose.
Sure.
So I would just add that the type of construction, this deal is also, Build Canada Homes is trying very hard to look at modular and other types of development tools that can happen quickly. And so they're trying to tap into some of that market. What I hear the most from the construction industry is that they want predictability. So a pipeline, so that you know that if you're going to bring in a team to work on something, you're going to have something to give them immediately after when that project's done. So this kind of certainty in terms of a way forward, projects that are going to start to move, and more to come is what the industry is looking for.
Okay, that's great to hear. Positive for economic activity as well. Is the prefab and modular construction method preferred, or is it necessary to sort of make the math work on this?
Through the chair. So the Build Canada Homes model for the 2,000 homes is really to promote the modular and prefab construction approach, because generally those homes are more efficient, both from a climate perspective, so they perform better, and they're more cost effective as well. But it's not the only method that is allowed through the Build Canada Homes. It's a encouragement or a preference.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing how this all plays out, but certainly I think to be the first city in Canada to have this agreement in place is something we should all be very proud of. So thanks, and congratulations again, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kitts. Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I do want to thank you. I think when all this started coming out, we remember back in the previous government where there was a lot of concern around how things would happen. We're all excited. We heard about all this money coming, and then lo and behold, oh, there's no stream for the DC component. There's no infrastructure. There's no water. And clearly this government that's currently in place has a better understanding of the needs of municipalities. And working in partnership with them makes this a very good deal for Ottawa and Canadians. And I just want to thank you for your leadership on this one. This is going to be one of the gold standards. I get to take this and put my FCM hat on and I'm headed to Saskatoon, wonderful balmy Saskatoon on Monday. And I'll be using this as one of the great example stories there. While I appreciate a lot of the questions here, I think a lot of us have very similar questions because this government made the commitment to move fast and furious, and we're seeing that. Like, promises made, promises delivered. This is going very quick. And some of my colleagues are asking the same questions that other municipalities are asking. So I think it's good that we're digesting this all together. I think FCM is definitely putting together a lot of information for all different types of topologies and municipalities across the entire country. Certainly there's concerns on the true rural municipalities on how they're going to come together. But for this environment here in this city, this deal sits very well. And maybe I can ask Marcia to comment on that, or maybe our city manager, about how we are very lucky in this city, that doesn't apply across the country, about how this deal is coming together.
I'll start through the chair. So I agree this is a good deal for Ottawa. And what was mentioned earlier by your colleagues around the stacking of this with the other bold initiatives the City of Ottawa has made, I think that's what really makes it different. And so when we started talking about how do we move things faster, we were looking at, other municipalities are talking about streamlining a planning process. Well, we already did that last fall and in January, and that's already in place for any builder. So we had to go farther in order to make it really a significant gesture in terms of what we would do on these federal lands in partnership. So I think the pace at which Ottawa is moving forward on a number of initiatives has created some innovation for us to really push even farther and make this deal work and at the scale and with the results that it promises.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks to staff. And I see Wendy's ready to speak there as well.
Thank you very much, Councillor, for the opportunity. First and foremost, I mean, we thank Mayor and Council for their leadership here, and I just want to say thank you again to the staff around the table for the tremendous heavy lifting that they have done to bring the deal that we have together today to all of you. It's a deal that reflects, I'm going to say, the uniqueness of our city that we have here and presents an opportunity that really helps us advance our housing goals across the spectrum here in the city. And I think one of the things that really stands out is the fact that, you know, we've got our pipeline of affordable housing. And isn't it a beautiful thing that we're going to have some funds to advance everything that sits on that priority list? So I'm very impressed and very proud to be here today with the team to present the deal to all of you.
Great, thank you for that. And just as wrap up, Mr. Mayor, again, thank you. We've asked for this. Things have come our way. Let's not pontificate any further. Let's start building homes for people that need them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Chair Leeper.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I just have my colleagues have asked all the other questions I had on the list. It's great. We've gotten a lot of good information this morning. Two things I am still wondering about, though. The 99-year affordability period that's guaranteed. I'm just wondering if we could get some comment on the enforceability of a 99-year covenant. This council has recently had some experience of that. Mr. Mark, is that going to be, are the feds going to be able to put that covenant on the eventual developer?
Mr. Mayor, where the city ran into difficulty in the Clublinks case is that it was a covenant for an indeterminate period of time, and with that lack of specificity, that proved that in violation of rule against perpetuities, and it was struck down. No, I don't see a 99-year covenant, a specified timeline, causing a concern, Mr. Mayor.
So the key difference there is the specificity of the time period, and the courts are doing that as opposed to something that is just open-ended.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
The difference between perpetuity and 99 years. Okay, thank you. And then the second question I have, we're going to be in for $15 million worth of foregone permit fees, application fees. Staff are going to be doing a lot of work on these staff initiated, presumably there's going to be rezonings, maybe OPAs, site plan approvals. The federal government is a land use authority in its own right. Oh, and sorry, the other piece that we're going to be doing is we are going to be the face of accelerated public consultation processes. I can well anticipate that some people will be looking to the city to have more consultation and to push back at certain aspects that they don't like. We're going to be the face of that, and we're going to have to defend it. They're a land use authority in their own right. Why, if they want to move fast, why don't they simply move fast on their own? And I'm sorry, I've forgotten. It's Valessa. I could ask the same question of Build Canada Homes rep.
To the chair, councillor, the federal government is seeing this, or Build Canada Homes, more specifically, is seeing this as a great opportunity to continue the collaboration that we've built with the City of Ottawa. And we do want to make sure that the process that we undertake together is respectful of local communities. You are right, the federal government could step in and build on the sites as we wish, but we would like to have a process with you that achieves the right balance where we work in collaboration, but we achieve the speed that we need as well as an organization. And Councillor, if you may indulge me for just 1 second, I do have to leave this meeting, but I would like to take the opportunity to thank the city for its leadership. This has been an outstanding partnership It has been a tough negotiation, but we've landed in a really great place, I think, for both organizations. And at Build Canada Homes, we are very enthusiastic to continue the great work with you and to continue to make Ottawa the amazing city that it is. Thank you.
Chair, can I jump in on that question as well? I would just say that it's important to remember that our role in planning development is more than just the approval. It is the city building activity to make sure that the houses get built in a way that is livable, that the traffic's going to work, that you can walk to connect to the parkland and the schools, and it's that whole bigger picture. So even though the federal government has authority that could say, I don't have to follow your planning rules, as you heard, they're not interested in doing that. But even if they were, it has to connect into our water system. You still need an entrance onto the road. You still have to connect with pathways for accessible movement through the community. So I was really encouraged by the way we started and continued this conversation from the beginning, because I think it is in the City of Ottawa's interest. While some of those public meetings may indeed be difficult, it's in our interest to own the decisions we make about what this is going to look like and how it fits into our community. We're going to see this over and over as intensification starts to take shape across Ottawa, and that's something I think that our staff can be proud of and council can be proud of, and we're willing to defend it.
I think that's really well said, and I appreciate that answer. And I am glad that the feds continue to work with us on these city building projects. But I don't want to minimize the contribution or the importance of that contribution that we're making to this partnership in terms of both the consultation process and us owning that. And I think the memo that you prepare in response to Councillor Johnson's motion is going to be really, really critical, so we can start communicating that to the affected residents. But also in terms of the really large amount of work that city staff still are going to have to do. I will thank city staff for the work that they have already done. Obviously, it has been a really significant effort to get us to this point. There is a massive disparity in the resources that are available to the federal and the municipal governments. We are cash strapped. We are trying to figure out how we're going to move ahead with needed infrastructure repairs, needed infrastructure to support growth. And I think when we initially heard that this was a $400 million announcement, I hadn't anticipated that we were going to go halvesies on it. But there is $150 million that is a second major federal tranche of investment in the pipeline projects that we desperately need. I know some of these projects are going to be in Kitchissippi ward, and in a ward that is rapidly gentrifying. These pipeline projects are going to be one of the few ways in which we can ensure that Kitchissippi is a neighborhood in which everyone has an opportunity to live. So since we have to attach that pipeline stream to the transfer of resources that I think is uncomfortable to the private sector in order to subsidize their surplus lands, I am happy enough to endorse this deal today. I would just say to the feds, there is a massive disparity of resources. If the federal government wants to develop its lands with mixed income communities, it has the resources to do so, and asking municipalities to contribute as almost equal partners in those partnerships when we have so few resources available to us is distasteful. But I am going to support this today, and I will thank staff for particularly getting a couple of those pipeline projects in my ward moving ahead. I'm excited to see those. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Chair Leeper. Just before we vote, I just had a couple of quick questions and clarifications. So just to be clear, I know you've touched on this already, but the agreement that I signed with Prime Minister Carney in December, it was clear at that time that both levels of government were going to be contributing to the agreement. It was not presented to the public or anybody at the event or otherwise as the federal government's putting in $400 million and we're putting in $0. It was clear at that time that both levels of government would be contributing to this agreement. Is that true?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. Also, I know people are looking at the $250 million that we're contributing. I want to make the point that and I hope this doesn't sound like putting too fine a point on it, because I think it's an important distinction. The federal government's putting in $150 million upfront to pay for the cost of constructing the units that are in our pipeline. We are not putting in any cash upfront. We are simply not going to collect some revenues over the course of many, many decades that adds up to between $200 and $245 million, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So, and I appreciate the comparison that Councillor Menard was making about, you know, we want to use our resources efficiently and effectively to build as many affordable and deeply affordable homes as possible. But we can't use that 250 million, to round it off. We can't use that money to build deeply affordable homes because the money doesn't exist. It's just money we're not going to collect, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to clarify that. Thank you. So on Councillor Johnson's motion, is that carried?
Carried.
And the item is amended. Is that carried?
Carried.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again to staff. We appreciate it. Motion to adjourn. Carried. Thank you, everyone.